Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the stream. I hope everybody is well. It is the weekend at long last, so I hope everybody's having a pretty chilled, relaxed time. So tonight we're going to be watching In the Mouth of Madness, and it was something of a request from a couple of weeks ago. Now, my friend John Rennie has just recently done a video discussing his thoughts and feelings about the film, and very impressive. Always go check that stuff out. So I've decided, because I haven't done it in a long time, and it's always good to talk to John. He is here with us tonight. So without further ado, I guess I'll bring him in. Brace yourselves, folks. And there we go. Good evening, John.
Hey, man, you alright, dude?
Not bad. Not bad. It's nice to see you on the stream again. The regular viewers are just going to have to put up with me being a lot smaller and down below you at this point. So if you drop anything, try to avoid my head. I thought it was more appropriate that I shove you up top than have me up top, like that kind of stuff. But there you go. Here's a quick look at the comments. John can't see the comments, just so you're aware. I don't believe you can you, John?
Yeah, I've opened up another window. So
have you?
I've got them up there.
I forgot. I'm talking to a professional.
Oh, I wish. I've got about 4 different windows open.
So we got Simon from Realm of Horror. He is in. We got Kerry's in. Minty's in. We've got quite a few people sort of knocking around. So good evening to you all. I don't think there's anything to sort of answer on there at the moment, but someone's talking about Kieran having a OnlyFans sideline, which is a little bit amusing. But you know, it's tough times. You got to make your money however you can, don't you? Well, hey, John, says Kieran.
Hey, everyone. Great to be here. But cheers for having us on, Glenn, man. It's great. It's always great to talk to you, man, about movies.
I mean, the amount of times we do occasionally have just a little bit of a Skype session that you go, yeah, let's just chat for 20 minutes. It ends up 5.5 hours. Just can't stop bloody talking.
I know the last one, I think it was about 4 o'clock in the morning when we finished, was it? Just me and you sitting having a few beers and talking about movies.
Just to get rat ass and talking about beer, about movies and stuff like that. Because for those who don't know, John and I used to work together in the same place when he was working in the gallery and I was working in the gallery. And
Glenn taught us everything I know.
The first thing that you, I think you went, "Are you Lampy Man?" and we got talking, and then you kept singing the theme to Midnight for about the next 2 months after that. Every time we walked in.
It's an earworm, that one.
Which, you know, maybe we'll do that one night. We'll see if we can watch that as a watch along at some point. For the record, Glenn, I don't. Minty's being a bit cheeky. Kieran apparently doesn't have an OnlyFans, so just disappointment all round. But there you go. One of the things we were talking about the other time, we had a brief sort of chat. We were talking about William Friedkin. And this was before the current news, because if those of you who aren't aware, Billy Friedkin died just recently.
Yeah, that was sad, man. Sad news. But it was like we're seeing, I mean, our heroes are getting to that age now, a lot of them, aren't they?
Yeah. It sucks getting older, because all your idols die, and all your friends are kind of like buggered off and done, you know, living their own lives and all that kind of stuff. You sort of sat here going, "That's still 16."
Sunrise, sunset.
But yeah, I mean, I had, because I hadn't been watched as many of the films of William Friedkin's as you have, John.
I was a huge fan. It was when I first. I mean, well, you know me. I've always loved movies, and Night of the Living Dead was kind of the movie that got me into movies. But the first movie that I ever studied was French Connection.
Yeah.
It was the first movie I ever looked at and said, why does this look different? Why does this feel different? And looked at it from a critical or a academic point of view. That was the first kind of work I looked at like that.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it until recently. It was one of those films that it would have been on the back burner. You know what it's like sometimes. And it was literally about a month ago. I picked it up on Blu-ray because there was all that kerfuffle about them.
Yeah, with Disney. Was it Disney?
Yeah. Well, Disney denied having done it. They said that that's how they received it and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, really. So it's a character moment in that particular thing. So I kind of picked it up on Blu-ray because I went, it's about time I'd seen this film. It's a great film. It's a really great film.
It's beautiful. I mean, for me, it was the first movie, like I say, that I really studied, but it was because it felt like a documentary. I mean, Romero had done it with Night of the Living Dead almost by accident, But Friedkin shot that Friedkin cinematographer on that was the guy who had shot the Cuban Revolution. He was the guy that was filming with Castro and stuff, and so he made a real directorial decision there to say, I want this movie to look a certain way.
Yeah.
I want this guy to shoot it because I want the work to have a reality to it, and that's what I always loved about Friedkin's work. It's got a reality to it.
Yeah, I mean, the story itself is based in, it's got one foot in reality. The characters are based on real people.
Yeah, Eddie Egan and two cops, Eddie Egan. And I can't remember the other guy's name now. I can't remember the other guy's name. But yeah, it was Eddie Egan and another cop from New York.
Yeah.
Based them on. They're actually in the movie.
Yeah.
Two cops.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really, really cool film. I mean, it was one of those things. It's like, because I think one of the things we were talking about was I think some responsibility in filmmaking, wasn't it? And it was like,
yes.
I think that's what got us onto talking about it. Because that car scene was just caution went out the window.
I know.
It was not a close set, not as close as it should have been.
Well, as far as I know, Friedkin had the camera himself. He didn't want to put the cameraman in danger. I think it was Friedkin on camera and the sound guy, and I think it was Hackman doing a lot of the driving for the close-ups, and then a stunt driver, obviously, for the...
Yeah, because he ploughed the car sideways into the wall. That bit where it goes around the corner and it goes out of control, hits the wall. Yeah, that was actually Hackman. He fucked up, and he says, I think
Sonny Grasso. Thanks, Kieran. Kieran just said that it was Eddie Egan and Sonny Grasso. That's it.
Friedkin sort of said, he was quite impressed by the fact that he didn't just sort of sit there and cry about it. He just switched the car back on and drove off.
It was a brave thing to do. Obviously, he couldn't get permission for it, so they just did it.
Brave. I mean, it was one of the things I'd always sort of had a bit of reservation when it came to Friedkin was because I'm not a big fan of that kind of irresponsibility in
I understand. I can see where you're coming from there.
It's when they pull it off, it's great, but when they don't, it's often tragic.
It's very dangerous. I mean, the famous car chasing Bullet with Steve McQueen that Peter Yates directed. Someone died filming that scene. There was a cameraman actually got killed when they were filming the car chasing Bullet.
Yeah,
it's so dangerous.
And it's a Twilight Zone as well with the Vic Morrow and the two kids.
Yeah. Was that John Landis?
Mm-hmm. And you get those. Yeah, you get those things, and it's like it's just horrific when that happens. And you sort of go, it's not worth it for filmmaking. But I was watching the extras on the Blu-ray for it. Friedkin's talking about it. He goes, and we did the car chase, and I wouldn't do it like that again. It says it was really not a good idea to do it that way. And I was like, oh yes, I can like you properly again.
It almost became, for a few movies, it became a calling card of his because of French Connection. He had that car chase in there. Then he said, okay, I need to do another one because I'm famous for it. And he did the really famous one with the To Live and Die in L.A. along the LA gutters, and the car chases the train again side to side and jumps in front of the train. And for that movie, he built a whole new hydraulic system so that he could film the movement of the car, which was brilliant cinematography. Then in Jade, he did a car chase in a crowd of people. And then I think it was the other one, the other car chase he did, To Live and Die in LA, Jade, and The Hunted. He did a car chase in a traffic jam in The Hunted. So the cars bashing against each other in a beautiful. I mean, he did some beautiful action scenes.
You don't get too many really good car chases these days.
I guess it's hard to do. I mean, it's like you see though, it's safety as well, and I think. Yeah. I mean, Deliverance is another movie I really admire, and I mean, the back in the 70s they couldn't get life insurance for that. No. I mean, the actors just did it because they couldn't get life insurance.
I think Burt Reynolds, he sort of like just wanted to do it anyway, didn't he? And he was just like, I'll do it, and it's like,
I can imagine Burt Reynolds being.
yeah, you know, I mean, there's not many people do it. For all the complaints I might have about Tom Cruise, he kind of like puts himself out there to do it. And, yeah, that is deeply irresponsible, especially at his age. You know,
Definitely.
But you know, you kind of admire the fact that that he wouldn't ask people to do anything that he wouldn't do in that sort of respect. So that's kind of cool and that kind of thing. I'm just going to quickly say to everybody, the link is in the description for the film. So there is the YouTube regular kind of free version. I don't know if that's going to be playable in America. Apparently there's some regional restrictions on it. So just be aware of that. So if you go quickly check that. If not, there is a rental version in the link below that, which is about £3.50. So that's what, about $4.50, $5 max, if it's in US dollars. If you want to join along and you haven't got your own media and stuff, if you are using your own media, just be aware of the fact that if you're using a DVD, then the chance, well, a British DVD at the very least, then you might go out of sync with us. But we will try to keep everybody on par as best as we can. As far as I know, the free YouTube one and the version that I'm watching should be the same. But it's
See what Kerry's just wrote there.
What's that?
John, you're forgetting the car chase in The Exorcist when Regan goes on a joyride with Dennings and they crash into the church. Kieran there mentioned Diva. Yeah, Violent Rome. Diva's a great car chase.
See, The Exorcist is a really interesting one, and I always adored the relationship between...
bike chase, I guess you should say.
Yeah, I always adored the relationship between Blatty and Friedkin.
It's beautiful to hear them talk to each other, isn't it?
They're like a pair of old fisherwomen having a go at each other. It's just, but it's great. It's great because they clearly have enough respect for each other that they don't care. You know, they're friends enough that that's not a problem.
Fantastic one. I think it was on when Kermode did the. Was it the director's cut? Kermode released the version you've never seen, and he put the spider walk back in there and stuff. And there was a great interview with them on there. And Blatty was saying, look, this movie is actually about hope, you know. It's not a downer. I don't want people to think it's a downer. I think we should have done the original ending. And Freakin says, I'll tell you what then. Next time we show this at the cinema, you can stand outside, and when people come in, we'll just have you say, this is not a downer, folks. This is not a downer. I love that interview. It's like, you see, they're like two old maids. They're great together.
But they're both incredible artists. That's the thing, isn't it? You know, when you see Blatty's movies, particularly The Exorcist 3, which is just an amazing film, which either cut that you watch is really, really good.
I mean, Ninth Configuration, man. That movie's to me is a masterpiece. I mean, for the guy who directed 2 films, it's incredible work. It's a mixture of comedy, drama, horror. It's really beautifully written and directed.
Yeah, it starts off like a US kind of like Nuthouse version of It Ain't Half Hot, Mum.
It's great.
You know, it's
Ed Flanders. Where are my pants?
Yeah, it's utterly kind of zany to start with, isn't it? That movie, and then it descends very quickly. I mean, it starts off sort of slowly, kind of tipping, and then it just goes off a cliff into this kind of like quite heartrending stuff. It does get quite, you know, it's a very, very sad movie when it gets.
I mean, not to spoil it either for anyone, but that ending, I mean, it's a very, very emotional ending.
Powerful, very powerful.
It's a very powerful end to a movie. One of the most powerful for me at that time when I originally saw it.
That is the moment that Blatty sort of gives the moment of hope right at the end. But you know,
that's Blatty.
That's Blatty, isn't it? It's not a downer.
That's Blatty's 2 thumbs up. It's not a downer, folks. It's not a downer. But he was incredible, man. I mean, my favorite. I mean, The Exorcist, you know, that we're talking about now it's a masterpiece of cinema. You know, really. But Cruising, for me, it's a very powerful film. I mean, Cruising, it's got that mix. That Nietzsche score is incredible.
Yeah, and, my friend Barry did a really passionate review of Cruising.
Oh, send me the link. I'll check that out.
I'll see if I can dig it out for you later and remind me.
That was one of my favorites, Cruising. I love that film.
Yeah, it's very, very well regarded, and quite rightly so. But yeah, Friedkin's work is just it just incredibly powerful. I mean, what a hell of a legacy to leave behind. Nobody's going to forget it.
Oh man, I mean, it was incredible. I mean, he started off, you know, it seemed a lot of the guys did. I mean, he was in television, live television. He started off in the mail room, you know, at the studio, and he worked his way up through television. He had that famous conversation with Hitchcock, where he says, "Yes, I met Hitchcock," and Hitchcock said, "Around me, you should wear a tie, young man."
Oh, Kieran says last time he checked a few days ago, Cruising is on YouTube Uncut.
Oh, great! It's great.
Maybe that's a watch along. At some point.
Oh, worth it, definitely. It's for me. I know it'll might cause a stir, but I put Cruising above The Exorcist. For me, that's his masterpiece. Even above Sorcerer now. The Sorceress. I mean, I'm so glad Sorcerer's gotten a kind of resurgence. After, was it the guy that directed Drive, Refn?
Right.
He kind of lobbied for it to be released again, didn't he, in cinemas?
It's great that you do get some filmmakers out there who are kind of like, you know, they're in it for the love as much as anything else.
Oh, yeah, John Smith just seen Cruising, indirectly based on Paul Bateson, the radiographer in The Exorcist. I saw a great interview, John, with Friedkin, talked about going to meet Paul in prison, and he discussed stuff with him, and that was one of the reasons why he did Cruising. Apparently he turned it down first, and then he met Paul Bateson, and it kind of made him think that I'd like to do it. That's a great point. It was everything he did had something behind it, you know. I think. I mean, later on you've got The Guardian, which a lot of people don't like, but I've always looked at it as a grim fairy tale. You know, it's all in camera effects, and I really love that movie the same way I love The Hitcher with Howard. And then I think it's a grown-up grim fairy tale. And then later on, The Hunted with Lee Jones and Benicio del Toro, I think, is a masterpiece as well.
I think, you know, certainly with someone like Friedkin, I think the thing that I admire most in his films is that he's not just trying to tell a story; he tells the story through characters, and you know, its characters are such a you know, they are the single most important thing for me in any film. Is you can have a film that is rough as a badger's arse, you know, just technically a piece of shit, but if the characters are good, it transcends so much.
Oh, I totally agree, Glenn, mate. I do. I mean, that's one of the things I love about Cruising is that character, all the characters in it are so. They've seen so much because of where they are and who they are, and you know they're in New York at this time. When it was, you know, I think it was pre-Giuliani, when it was all messed up, and it's still kind of the New York Taxi Driver, you know, and it's so dark. But Paul Sorvino in Cruising gives this performance, and Friedkin talks about it, and he just said there's a note of sadness through the whole character. It's a beautiful performance. I mean, Pacino's performance is amazing, but for me, that's Paul Sorvino performance is just breathtaking. It's such a sadness to it. It's great.
So much of it comes from the casting. You know, for whatever reason, he's just managed to get the right cast just about every time.
He's good, like, and he's a good director. He directs, doesn't he? It's like sometimes you'll get people who'll take a laid back approach, but he never did.
No, sometimes they took it too far with the whole like letting shotguns off on. It's like, you know, I sort of get what you're doing, but fuck, dude, really?
That's interesting now what Kieran's just brought up about The Wages of Fear. It's was it Clouseau, Kieran, who did The Wages of Fear? It's a beautiful film, Wages of Fear, and Sorcerer is, I mean, it's beautiful in its own way. I love that Tangerine Dream score. He was always good with music too, with Friedkin. I mean, the Wang Chung stuff To Live and Die in L.A. is outstanding. And the use of tubular bells in The Exorcist, he just nailed it.
Yeah.
He had a really good eye, a good ear, I should say, a good ear for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think, you know, with The Exorcist, that theme tune, because that was very innovative, that particular piece of music. There wasn't really anything that sounded quite like that at the time. So it did sound this sort of, you know, in a contemporary sense, it was a very odd, unusual soundtrack. Very striking.
It's Mike Oldfield, right?
Yeah.
Tubular Bells?
Yeah, because he was one of the early sort of guys in like kind of multi-track recording.
I always remember there was a guitar solo he did there was a song called Moonlight Shadow. I can't remember was it Kirsty MacColl? I can't remember. He had a girl singing from. I might be wrong on that, But the guitar solo in it, he was a brilliant musician.
But yeah, and it is. The thing is that track, in some respects, just I think even at the time there was something familiar about it. I don't know what it was. There's always something about that song, about that piece of music. That it sounds like it came from somewhere.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. It was just that choice he made as well to cut away from her for a second, and you see the nuns with the flowing dresses and the leaves falling, and it's the music becomes like breath, and it's almost like the music's pushing the leaves. It's incredible scene.
And of course, you get those iconic stairs as well. You know, the staircase between one street and the other, where the victims fall down. That's one of the things he's very good at, is using the locations as a character in its own right.
I agree.
So things like that, those kind of moments, and Blatty did it very much with Exorcist 3 as well. I mean, they are the two best films.
They're incredible.
Yeah,
I mean, it is. I mean, I am looking forward to the new Exorcist. It looks, from what I've seen, it looks a little bit lower budget than I was expecting. I mean, is it from Blumhouse?
I think it is. I haven't really seen anything of it though.
I just saw the trailer, but I was a little bit, not shocked, but I was a bit taken aback. I thought, it doesn't look like what I expected, but I'll watch it. I mean, I'm a huge Exorcist fan. Oh, there you go. Maggie May, Carrie just said there, who sang that Moonlight Shadow. Cheers, Carrie.
Nah. Yeah. A lot of people give Blumhouse a hard time, but they are one of those studio houses, whatever, that kind of are very hit and miss. When they hit, it's really good. When they miss, it's usually pretty bad. But so hopefully it'll be one of the high points. But I
hope so too. I mean, over the years, I'm a huge Borman fan, so I've often lobbied for the kind of uniqueness of Exorcist 2, and I'm a huge Schrader fan as well. So with Dominion, which was kind of Exorcist 4, and then it was Rennie Harlan remade that as Exorcist: The Beginning, because the studio didn't like Schrader's version. But because Schrader's Schrader, I guess. But I kind of like them both, But Schrader's is a lot more about survivor guilt.
It's the not so well made version, but there's a reason for that. It's because the film was essentially not completed.
Yeah. And he had to kind of hammer that exorcism scene on the end.
Yeah, but they did it with 3 as well.
With Nicole Williamson, Father Morning.
Yeah, where they give him about 10-second screen time before, in the film before, just to go, oh, this character exists, and then kind of bolted it on and made this sort of Rambo entrance through the lift, and which is really weird.
John's just saying that, everyone goes to Georgetown to visit the stairs. There was a mate of mine sent us a picture, John, the other day. It was he went to Washington and sent us a picture like, can you tell where I am? And I was like, yes. That's awesome. Oh yeah, Blumhouse, Chase Car, but it is Blumhouse.
Are there any bits of Priest left?
It's just a pile of rubble where the stairs used to be.
Okay, folks, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to ask you guys to all get yourselves all queued up with the film. We will get going in just a few minutes' time. I'm going to very quickly grab a bottle of beer so I don't have to interrupt myself too early into the movie. And then we will get going by about 5:30. So if you get yourselves all kind of ready to go and give us a thumbs up, and then we will look at starting in just a few minutes. That would be very good of you. I shall just very quickly grab another beer. I need to get a little beer fridge down here, don't I?
I've brought 2 up there. I'll have to go downstairs to get another one in a minute. I've had a Heineken and a Red Stripe, and I've gone for the Red Stripe.
Right. Well, hold the house for a second. I will be about 20 seconds, and you go get yourself stocked up.
All right, cool one. Hi, Kieran there. You mentioned Clouseau, I know what you mean. I always thought he was a little bit underrated, or under-discussed, I should say, not underrated. Because Diabolique is an amazing film.
Here. Definitely getting to that time of year now. It's better. So I would put I've got a little air conditioning thing down the back there, but it's like a fucking jet engine going off.
Blumhouse have done an awesome audio drama, in case you're interested, the Mohawk Caves, or the Manawa Caves, sorry. Oh, cool, man. I've been into my audio dramas lately. It's short ones anyway. I just listened to Tim Curry. I found on YouTube doing Stephen King's Crouch End. It was fantastic. If anyone's interested in audio books, it's only a short one, about 40 minutes, but Tim Curry did an awesome job of it. It's beautifully read.
I'm back, by the way. So if you want to grab yourself a beer, and then
all right, cool, man. I've got one here. I'm alright. I've got a half.
You're all good to go, are you?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, we've got a couple of thumbs up. We'll just give it a couple more minutes, and then we'll be good. So what's this audio drama? The Manawook Caves. Okay. Yeah.
I didn't know Blumhouse did audio dramas. That's interesting, man.
Grandmaster Gas says, I'm probably alone in thinking this. I wish I'd made Linda Blair's possession in The Exorcist less explicit. Came across as a bit comedic. It didn't come across comedic to the audience at the time.
True.
You know, I mean, if you ever read the book is a lot more explicit. Particularly with a certain scene involving a crucifix.
Yeah.
Because in the movie they sort of blunt it a little bit by just making it look like she's literally just stabbing herself, and that's not what she's doing with that.
I was interested. I mean, bloody, I remember listening to him talk about it, and he said it was where could I go with this to get her mother to the point where it was like, that's it, that's it. I need to fix this.
Yeah.
I need to. This is way beyond any illness. This is way beyond any kind of physical ailment. This is. This is the breaking point, and obviously it works.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I know what you mean. There is a lot of it. I'm surprised looking back at The Exorcist how much of that scene there is. I think it was Dick Smith did the special effects for it, and it does start to. I mean, it still looks great, but it's not up to modern standards. But it is a long scene.
Oh yeah,
I mean, long exorcism.
The film is. I don't think it's a particularly long film in runtime. It feels longer than it is.
Yeah.
Because it is. I mean, it is a slow film. Yeah, so you don't get too many films like that these days with that kind of pacing, because it does take forever in a day to actually sort of get anywhere. But it is one of those that just piles on the suspense and the tension as it goes along. Just little things, little glimpses, little.
I think that was the one thing that I loved when Mark Kermode did that. The version you've never seen was there was a longer version of Karis and Father Merrin on the staircase.
Yeah.
And it was a longer conversation of him saying, why this little girl, and Merrin says because he wants us to see ourselves as ugly, as if God could never love us. And that scene was great in the version you've never seen, the extended version. And I think they'd cut it out originally, obviously, because it it felt long. But it was an excellent scene, that one they added it back in. I think the first time I saw Exorcist, it was still banned in some places. Oh,
I remember the first time I saw it, it was still banned on video.
Aye.
We saw it because they did a theatrical run again. And I've still got the poster somewhere. I've got the quad from that re-release.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I remember going to see that, and I remember being like, "This film's infamous."
Yeah.
And being really kind of like tense about watching that film. And there's only a few films that I've ever felt like that.
I mean, at the time, I remember seeing it. I think it was it must have been mid-90s, early 90s, and it almost felt like a rite of passage in horror. You had to see it. And it was, I mean, the version I saw was somebody copied me a VHS because it wasn't readily available in some places. And it almost felt forbidden a bit.
I mean, because it was never banned as so much as it was just it was just not allowed on home release. So it's always had the theatrical certificate, and I think the BBFC actually stood up for that at the time, but they just went, we can't release it on home release.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I was looking at Chainsaw Massacre a couple of weeks back, and what they said about the Chainsaw Massacre, the BBFC, was great. It was kind of Toby Hooper really did his job there because they found it hard to cut anything.
Yeah.
Because it was all about the atmosphere, and someone just mentioned there in the chat about The Exorcist being more about atmosphere.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's when you look at it shot for shot, there's not much in it which is gory, if anything, really.
Yeah, it was Kieran there. Kieran said it was atmospheric. Yep.
Yeah, there's a little bit of infliction of injury, but not much. And most of it's dialogue and sound that kind of built up that tension. But it's the kind of horror that didn't need to be kind of like full on explicit. It just had a few gross out moments, like the puking of the pea soup type thing. But yeah, again, just a wonderful cast in it. Everybody that's in it was just, did their jobs really, really well. And you do have the, those characters that are kind of, because it has those characters that are very conflicted. Are they kind of like, entirely the normal trope of a hero?
It's an interesting point, that. I mean, I remember listening to Freakin' talk about it. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here. It was a long time ago, but I remember him saying that really, if you watch it, it's about Father Karras. The film's not about Regan. It's not about a mother. It's about Father Karras. Yeah, it's about this guy. It's not about. It's about the devil trying to get to him through this little girl.
Yeah, he's the one that has the character arc.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very much his perspective. He's like the first person you really get to meet, and pretty much the last person, bar the very kind of like short coda at the end. Yeah. Anyway, right, we shall get started, folks. Are you happy, John?
Yes, definitely. But he's the William Friedkin one. I appreciate you talking about that. I love to talk about him. He was a brilliant filmmaker.
Absolutely amazing. But it's it's been fun to talk about. I mean, we could literally go on for about another 3 hours. I'm sure. Maybe that's something we'll do.
Let's talk about John Carpenter.
Maybe that's something we'll do in the future. Should on The Exorcist by reintroducing the word cunting. That's like every Tuesday for them. Right. So everybody's got given thumbs up, so hopefully everybody's ready. So we are going to get started on the count of 5, and we're going to go on go. So here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. If I can get my bloody tablet to play. God damn it.
I love this introduction, man. For a long time for me, that's because I love this movie. That New Line Cinema meant In the Mouth of Madness to me for a long time. It didn't mean Freddy.
No.
it meant In the Mouth of Madness.
I think it was always Freddy for me, just because that's the first time I saw that logo.
Oh.
But there you go. You knew the sort of film you were going to get when it was a New Line Cinema.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they were great. I mean, it was Bob Shea, right? Was it Robert Shea? The guy around the company was. And Freddy was their cash cow, right? I mean, funnily enough, the guy who wrote this, Mike DeLuca, he wrote Freddy's Dead, which is probably my least favourite Freddy, I think. But he went on to huge fame.
With this intro, this music, it's not what you'd expect from a John Carpenter soundtrack.
It was I mean, it was, as far as I know, he wanted Enter Sandman by Metallica.
Yeah, you know what? I was going to start singing the lyrics because it really does fit for this.
and he couldn't get it. I'm not sure why.
Probably too expensive.
But he called in a few friends, and one of the guys who plays the guitar on this is from the Kinks. I think it's Dave Davies. Doing some of the lead guitar on this. It was because he was John Carpenter's mate.
It's like a mix between Enter Sandman and rock and roll from the Trick or Treat film.
Oh, I love it. I think it's a great opening, similar to Christine. In the way that the creating Christine, I think it made me think of Christine. I remember the first time I saw this, I was thinking, it's creating the evil, just like Christine was on the assembly line.
Yeah, I mean it's got to be evil because it's rock and roll, isn't
it? Yeah.
Kieran says, saw this a couple of years ago. From what I remember, I liked it, though it left wanting a little at times. Sam Neill denies the happenings tad too long for me. Well,
I'm going to have to turn the music down. I was getting too into it there. I had a blasting in my earphones.
Yeah. So denial is not just a river in Egypt. Who's it said that? I can't remember.
Denial is not just a river in Egypt. It sounds like something W.C. Fields or someone would say, doesn't it? Gary B. Kibbe, brilliant cinematographer. He did Prince of Darkness with Prince of Darkness, They Live. I think he did Ghosts of Mars and Vampires with Carpenter too. He's a brilliant cinematographer. Check that out, man. That's a water filtration plant that in Canada.
Is that right near the Niagara Falls?
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess.
Yeah, there's one. No, that was a power station, actually, come to think of it. Yeah, but that shot is like, and there's one of the comments that some people have made about this film is there's a few sort of external shots of buildings that look like matte paintings. There is that quality to this, to the visuals in this
it's
movie.
beautiful. That wide screen that he shoots it with, it's incredible. It's pretty difficult for me to say anything bad about the movie because this was a very important film to me.
Mm.
It was, I made a short film when I was in my 20s, and I studied this film in order to make the short film. I looked at what he did with light, how he used the sound.
Mm.
It was one of those. In fact, the first time I saw this when I was a kid, I bought it X rental from the video store. I bought the video X rental.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I watched it until the tape was burnt out.
It's hard to get hold of now. That's the thing, isn't it? There's no current releases of it on home media.
Yeah, there's a German release from a few years ago. I think Scream Factory did a print, but that's very expensive now. And I think that was Blu-ray a few years back.
Sam Neill looking normal.
Oh, it's great in there. I'm sorry about the balls. It was a lucky shot, that's all.
I love this Doctor as well because he's got one of those hit me faces.
Great cameos. This movie's got so many great cameos. That's John Glover.
Yeah.
He's in 52 Pickup with Frankenheimer. He did voices for Batman. David Warner, who's in this, did voices for Batman too.
He's one of those actors, isn't he, that you sort of like go, he's got one of those incredibly punchable faces, but he's probably a really nice person.
I love him. He's in there. Scrooge, Richard Donner, which is one of my favourite Christmas movies.
It's always the arsehole character actors that are really the nicest guys as well, probably. So I like to think that he's probably a real sweetheart to meet in real life.
I love this line coming up from Trent. In regards to the music. Well, Sam Neill's scream, it is legendary.
I was going to say, if nothing was going to drive, if you weren't mad when you went in, listening to that music is going to drive you mad. It's just like, just banging your head against the glass.
It's what he says. I mean, it's a John Carpenter movie. Mm-hmm. You've got the Carpenters, and then Trent says, not the Carpenters too. That's great. Yeah, RoboCop. That's right. Ralph O'Hara, he was in RoboCop too. He's cool, man. He pops up all over the place. He was in one of the Batman. I think it was Batman and Robin, and he was almost a blink and you miss it. I've always admired him. He's a good character actor. But this movie it's a phenomenal cast. I'm so surprised he got the people in it. I mean, I think it was 8 or 10 million budget if I remember. Shot in '93.
Yeah.
So I mean, Sam Neill's hot off Jurassic Park here.
Glover is also Mr. Clamp, Donald Trump in Gremlins 2. Yes.
Yeah, hi Gremlins 2, of course, man.
Yeah. That is an underrated film.
That's great. Christopher Lee, right? Was Gremlins 2?
He's in that as well. Yeah, it's a whole bunch of people. It's just it's a wonderful satire, and it is one of those films that you sort of go, that's where the director just completely unleashed themselves and did what the fuck they wanted to do. I love Sam Neill's just really good at doing that huge intensity as well, isn't he?
It's one of my favourite Sam Neill performances. This, I mean, when you look at the scope and the range that this guy had, I mean, it's a very complicated character piece.
It's probably not the easiest thing to follow in the whole kind of flow of making a film either. That's why you need a good director.
Yeah.
Although, from what I understand, Sam Neill did actually have a little bit of directorial kind of influence within this, because apparently he was a director before this.
Yeah, he did documentaries, Sam Neill. I've seen one of them. I think some of them are pretty hard to find. I think one of them was a special feature on... I did a New Zealand movie. Sleeping Dogs. And I think one of his documentaries was a special feature on it. It was good. But yeah, he suggested, from what I remember from reading the books, he suggested a lot of the high-angle shots in this film to Carpenter, and he used them.
Yeah. That says, volumes about Carpenter. But Kieran says, hearing John talk about being an active filmmaker reminds me how much of a failure I am in that regard. You're not a failure until you let yourself be.
I don't see that.
You do it as and when you can. Peter Jackson started that way. Look how long it took to do Bad Taste. It took years and years because they did it in their spare time. You've only failed at it when you let yourself fail at it. And even if you never make it big, do it for the love of it.
That's what I do, man. I mean, I made the film that was based on this. It was to teach myself cinema. I mean, that never went anywhere. Did a couple of festivals and that was it. It's my own money. You know, it was just it was almost a love letter to this film.
I love this scene because it's like, you know, he walks in there. It's like kind of like Sam Neill's got all this kind of the runes and stuff all over the walls and over his face and stuff.
And that beautiful lighting in the background.
I'm not insane. I'm just an artist.
But that shaft of light in the background. I mean, this is a 3-walled set.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what Carpenter was really good at. You know, he was really good at working on budgets and using those techniques that he learned in film school.
This is where I'm at when it comes to lighting and stuff, as you know. I mean, John knows do lighting and stuff like that. I try to explain to certain directors that you don't necessarily need to see every inch of a person's face.
Yeah.
You know, that's not necessary. Sometimes it's detrimental because it makes everything look flat. The lighting in this is very theatrical. It is kind of point source.
That's one of the things I love.
Yeah.
I love about it is, I mean, you know me, Glenn. I love theatrical lighting. I prefer it. I mean, talking about, we mentioned Freaking before, not to bring him back, but just briefly, it's two totally different styles, and this is exactly right for this Lovecraftian horror. You know, it's almost like going into his mind. Yeah, that's right. Kieran there, Sleeping Dogs, New Zealand, Roger Donaldson. That's the one. I bought a Blu-ray of it a few years ago, and I'm sure that was one of Sam Neill's documentaries on there.
Simon says, the only reason I do my website and YouTube channel is because I like it. It sure as hell ain't for the viewers.
Me too.
You have to have that attitude to a certain extent, because there's so many people break themselves trying to be creative and expecting an audience to suddenly appear. Sometimes it will never happen. Sometimes it will just come out of the blue and it will, you know, be a thing. When I started doing this, I had like about, you know, for the longest time, about 12, 15 viewers. And over time, it's sort of grown and grown and grown. And yeah, I still got a very small audience, generally speaking, but you're lovely. And I love doing this stuff for you guys.
And we love you, man.
Oh.
But it's for the love of it. The same with me, man. I mean, you obviously, Glenn, you influenced me to start my channel. I spoke to you about it, and it was just for the love of it because I want to meet other fans.
Yeah, you didn't want to take my advice on doing now Kubrick stuff, though.
I know that was a mistake. I've been bullied and everything, man, on those Kubrick videos. It's horrible. I've had people bullying us.
Isn't it?
It's trolling us. I mean, I respect everyone's opinion. I really do, and I like people to give me their opinion. That's the whole point. It was supposed to be a dialogue, but Kubrick fans can be mean.
That's the nice way of putting it. Complete pricks can be. It's a pretty good description today. Not all of them, obviously, but some
I love
real
this whole scene with Peter Jason. It's totally noir, isn't it?
It is. It is.
It's beautiful light in there through the shades, and it's almost like I read a book a while ago about Carpenter. I think it was Order in the Universe, I think it might have been called. And it was essays about him, and they talked about the kind of influence that Hawks and stuff had on him. And this film definitely brings back almost like a Humphrey Bogart type character, I think, in Trent.
You know, I mean, that's the thing with noir, and sort of taking it back to the lighting thing. You look at the lighting in this scene, there are lots of shadows on face and stuff like that. It's a very sculpted lighting, which is, you know, there's a temptation when you do film of get all those reflectors in there and, you know, kind of make it as bright as fuck on their faces. You got to see every millimeter of their face. Yeah. It's like you lose so much characterization when you do that.
He's great. I mean, Peter Jason there, he's been in he's part of kind of Carpenter's Repertory Company, isn't he? He's been in a lot of his films.
He has.
I think it started with Prince of Darkness, I think, and he was in Ghosts of Mars. And
he has his family. His filmmaking family, like a lot of the greats did. You know, George Romero had his clique, and John Carpenter has his, and you know, even Rob Zombie. You know, he has his regular cast of people that he collaborates with. That is one thing I would absolutely give him credit for. As you know, as bad as I think his movies are, he clearly trying to have some fun doing it.
Oh, this movie, that's what I loved about it. It was total. It feels like fun. I feel like this was the first time Carpenter was having fun for a while. I mean, before this, he'd done Body Bags for TV. He'd done Memoirs of an Invisible Man, which is obviously
weird.
Legendary pain in the bum for him working with Chevy Chase there.
It's one of the films of his I have not watched, and it is because of Chevy Chase. I can't stand the guy.
I think I did a review of it a while ago. It might have been a year ago, or it had. I think it has its place.
Oh yeah.
In Carpenter's work, because it's kind of like his nod to Hitchcockian thrillers, you know.
Incoming asshole.
Oh, it's great to see. Bernie Casey there, the actor with Sam Neill, was apparently in the running to play Childs in The Thing. I was reading about it on, I think it was IMDb a few weeks ago. And he was always sad he didn't get to work with him on that, so he brought him back in for this.
Right. It's funny how this is working
just look at the way that he directs this. Those inserts of the stuff smashing on the floor, and in a second there, the eyes, then the gunshots. It's beautiful editing.
And there's nothing fast about the scene.
No.
It's a real kind of sort of creeping terror thing going on. This is what you do. You don't try to murder someone when they're in a donut shop.
You know what John Smith just said there? So have you read Sutter Kane? I wish I could. I did. I think if Sutter Kane released some books.
John Smith says Kubrick fans would be the ultimate downfall of Kubrick's legacy. Yes.
George Buckflower, yeah, man, that guy's amazing, isn't he? He's the guy in the... so he's the... If I had this thing, I'd be president, right? And Escape from New York. And then he's the guy that throws himself off the roof and kills himself with his own broom, I think, in Village of the Damned. And he was... What are the Carpenter movies was he in? He was They Live. He's the guy in They Live with the cool watch, isn't he? Who sells out.
Yeah.
Great actor. Great character actor.
The broomstick death in Village of the Damned was just hilarious.
It's total. You can totally see the dummy as well, can't you?
It's just more the idea of it's like, okay, I'm going to kill myself with a broom.
Well, he was Kieran saying I remember his book from Criminally Insane. He did a really low-budget slasher movie called Drive-In Massacre that he wrote as well. He was an interesting guy. He was always hanging around in Hollywood.
Charlton Heston.
Sure. Charlton Heston, one of my all-time heroes. It was Carpenter said it was he was really surprised when he met him because he was expecting him to be this right-wing type guy, you know, and obviously that's the total opposite to Carpenter. And he said they got along really well. It was in it's an article I was reading about it earlier, and he just said he was a total gentleman. He did the work. There was no ego there at all. He knew the lines. He actually wanted to discuss the scenes and see how Carpenter wanted to direct him.
I was a very old school actor in that sort of respect.
I always really admired him. I mean, to me, I was a big action guy, you know, RoboCop 2 and all the Arnie movies and Sly and Dolph Lundgren, Van Damme, Seagal. I loved all those guys growing up. And, I mean, Rutger Hauer and some of the earlier guys even, like Cornel Wilde or Heston, I really looked at those as just earlier action heroes and stuff like Ben-Hur and Ten Commandments and that. Some great movies. But must have been a huge coup on the budget they had to get Charlton Heston for this.
Sometimes they do that kind of stuff cheaper, don't they? Just because they want to play. I don't know if that was the case in this. But, you know, I mean, was Charlton Heston as big at this point? Cause...
I don't think so. I mean, as far as I know, I'm a big fan of his. At this time, he'd done a television movie called Original Sin. So he was kind of making a move to TV. He was also writing and directing. He was in some sci-fi TV stuff. He did a film called Solar Crisis for kind of the Sci-Fi Channel. It was so I guess it was probably a good deal for him too. But I mean, I think this is only the one of two horror movies he did, right? Unless you class Motherload that he directed as a slasher. But he was only in this and The Awakening. I think they're the only two horror movies that he really did.
So going back to what you were saying about earlier, you know, with John Carpenter being more left wing as well.
Yeah.
Because that's always been an interesting aspect of the horror films and stuff like that, is the political divide. And, you know, George Romero's much kind of critical of the kind of commercialization and racial sort of politics of America. So you can class him as more left-leaning, and John Carpenter's more left-leaning. But then you get others who are further on the right. I think like Jeff Lieberman, for instance, is more of a conservative kind of character, and that comes through some of his stories.
Big fan. I know you didn't. You have some contact with Lieberman?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of him. I love one of my favorite slashes is his the Brad Fiedel score for oh man, I can't remember the name now, with the two killers and the whistles where she rams a hand down his throat in the end just before dawn. Before dawn. I love that movie.
I've got to watch it again because I've only watched it once.
It's a fine slasher. It gets a lot of stick, but I really like Lieberman's direction.
Yeah, I mean, it is a clearly low-budget kind of affair. It kind of feels like that, but it has that weird kind of almost Pittsburgh kind of vibe to it.
I mean, he was cool. I mean, Squirm was a great movie. I mean, for the budget he had for Squirm, it's amazing.
And I think he's just on his website he's released Remote Control on Blu-ray.
Oh, cool, man.
Which I might treat myself to at some point.
I wouldn't mind that too. I really like Satan's Little Helper. I like all the Lieberman stuff. He's
That's an odd one to get into because it's shot on digital.
She gives a crazy performance, Amanda Plummer, in that. I really I mean, she's kind of known for crazy, I guess, but I really liked her. But I love that one. It blew me away when you said you'd spoke to him. I remember I was like, wow, you spoke to Jeff Lieberman. That's incredible.
Hobbs End Horror. It's a very specialist porno.
This is cool. Again, this is what this movie does really well, because we come back to this scene I think 3 times in the film, and each time more and more is revealed.
It's funny, isn't it? Because particularly with the sequence, it starts off in a kind of normality, and you're slipping into a horror. It literally sort of changes within frame from being kind of one character to another. So it's a genius piece of shooting.
Oh, it's great. I mean, just if you listen to the background in the TV and what's happening, the world's falling apart. It's a really cool movie to just watch, and the world's falling apart around these guys. And it's always there in the background, and they go to New England, and while they're in New England, the whole world's destroying itself. It's a very, very dark film, which I love about it. I really love that. For me, this is even more than Prince of Darkness, I would say. This film has a looming sense of dread.
I've got to rewatch Prince of Darkness. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Masterpiece.
I think I had to get a Polish version of the DVD or something like that at the time. There's a whole bunch of these movies that are just really hard to get hold of.
That one was for a while. I mean, I had the old, I think it was Guild VHS. I had the Guild of it for years, the Guild VHS.
Yeah. John Smith says, I imagine Heston scenes were all shot in the morning.
Probably only had him.
The thing is, he'd have come in prepared. Yeah, that was one of the things that was apparently quite a aspect of his performances. He'd come in and he'd be just ready to go. So, because his heyday really was the days when coming in and filming was even more expensive because it's massive crews and film.
Totally.
You don't fuck up with film if you can help it because it's expensive.
Oh, Matt Heston was, I mean, he made some very interesting choices. I mean, to do Planet of the Apes,
so
he had to really sell that to the studio.
This character, the comic book guy, the bookshop guy.
Yeah.
You're getting characters like this sort of appearing, and they're like looking a little bit more zombie-ish each time. Yeah, he's pale. He's got the scars on his face and all that kind of stuff. And it's like,
I love it. I mean, to me, the whole thing, like I was saying before, it's like it has a sense of dread that I love about it. And to me, things really do seem to be falling apart. And I love that. I loved it. It was less of a microcosm than Prince of Darkness was, or The Thing was. It seemed more open world, like the whole world's falling apart. Which is, I guess, why it's the third. And is it the final one? I mean, he did 3 apocalyptic movies, right? Prince of Darkness, The Thing, and In the Mouth of Madness. Yeah. And he kind of put them together, didn't he, in his own catalog as his apocalypse trilogy.
Yeah. I've always thought it's a little bit of a kind of arbitrary sort of connection between those movies, but yeah, that's what he considers it to be. There's some aspect of those movies that he particularly likes.
It's the end of the world. All 3 movies, the world is going to end. But what I loved about this one is that it really
does this world exist?
It's great, man, isn't it? I mean, coming back to this again, the editing where he comes back and it gets a little bit more revealed, and it starts to feel like it's not Trent's narrative. Even Trent's not in control of his narrative. He can't even control what's happening. You know, I love that about it. Because I mean, the Lovecraftian lore, Trent is the unreliable narrator. He's the guy telling his story from a padded cell. And I love that. I think that was the best thing that he took from Lovecraft, was that unreliable narrator.
It's the most interesting narrator, isn't it, really? Because when you got the reliable narrator, then you've got trust.
Yeah.
When you've got the unreliable narrator, you not only got a lack of kind of trust, that automatically puts tension on you, but you've also got the kind of the insight into the character that is a lot harder to achieve with a reliable narrator, because there's things you have to infer from the film. So the film has to talk to you about, subtly tell you that this is not quite right.
Yeah. I love it. I think it's one of my favorite things about the film is you never really know if what you're seeing is real or not. I mean, this is Trent's nightmare.
Or is it? Is it his?
And he uses the same trick here from Prince of Darkness.
It was only a dream. Wait.
Aye. I mean, he was a guy that did that a lot. I mean, he knew cinematic technique, I think. I mean, I'd love to see him do another movie. I really would.
I think John Carpenter's actually talked about that kind of false waking up scene. He did it in another film.
Prince of Darkness. At the very
he said he felt it was better in that one than it was in this one, but he still liked it.
I didn't see John Smith there. Did anyone see Heston play Sherlock Holmes? I don't think I did, John, man. Do you know what the title is? I'd love to see it. I'm a huge Heston fan.
That would be weird. That'd be a weird one. Heston doesn't strike me as the kind of person that will do a very convincing British accent.
I mean, Sherlock Holmes was always Jeremy Brett, I think. I think Jeremy Brett was the one for me on British TV. Because I grew up watching that guy. Basil Rathbone as well, but I love Jeremy Brett. He was incredible in that role.
Kieran says the fact that some people in the States share the ape's anti-evolutionary beliefs is just hilarious to me.
It was a really hard sell for him. I read his biography a few years back in the Arena, and he knew that Planet of the Apes was going to be a hit. I mean, but the studio didn't want to do it. And he said, "Look, guys, this is going to be a hit." He really sold it to the studio. Him and the producer, Arthur P. Jacobs, they really had to sell it. And, of course, it was one of the biggest films of 68. Was it 68 or 67 Apes? I think it was 68, was it?
I can't quite remember. This is where you know that this is not normal behaviour, cutting up the books.
It's great. It's a great little plot device, this. Because he becomes a little bit insane. He rubs the ink on his eyes, and it just... Look at him, man. Look at the performance. His character's great. Because he thinks he's smarter than everybody else. And he thinks he's got this thing figured out, but, man, he's got no idea, has he? It's incredible character. I mean, the character arc it's beautifully played.
I mean, you were just talking like kind of the sort of conspiracy theory types, I guess. It's kind of what he is, to some extent. You know, he's lost his mind. He's not quite... He's seeing connections that aren't necessarily there.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Julie Carmen there, she should be mentioned as well. Fantastic actress, Julie Carmen. She's done some great stuff. She was in a fantastic Nicholas Roeg film called Cold Heaven. She's a really good actress. In fact, wasn't she in... did she do one of the... I know someone mentioned Hellraiser before, but was it her? No, that was Valentina Vargas, wasn't it? Sorry, I got the two mixed up.
That's the one I've got to watch again at some point. That would be quite a good one for maybe a double watch long, Hellraiser 1 and 2.
I'm a huge fan of franchises. I love the Hellraiser stuff. I love Scott Derrickson's Inferno.
I kind of find the third one passable, but not much more than that. But
there's a third one with Craig Schaefer in the nightclub, or he's a nightclub owner.
That's the one with like the CD Cenobite and stuff like that. It was just bonkers enough to sort of work. The ones after that, which is almost not Hellraiser movies at all. In fact, most of them weren't. They were just sort of like they shoved Doug Bradley in just to tie it into the franchise.
Oh, cool, man. Cheers, John. John Smith just said Crucifier of Blood there with Hess and his Holmes. I'll write that down so I remember. Crucifier of Blood.
Someone says, I remember they used to show all the Planet of the Apes films on TV when I was a kid. One of the reasons I love them. Yeah, there's something quite warm about those sorts of memories, isn't it? It's like Bond movies and things like that.
It's for me, the Planet of the Apes. I mean, to keep talking about Heston, is that's another character arc that's quite amazing. I think his performance in that's very powerful in Planet of the Apes, because he's another guy similar to Trent who thinks he's got it all figured out, man. He hasn't Planet of the Apes, and he's like, I've got to find somewhere. There's got to be somewhere in the universe that's better than mine. And of course,
something about the movie where the hero kind of like where you say they think they're so smart. It's like you don't really know shit. they're kind of knocked off of their little pedestal right at the last second.
I love the comedy in this as well. Never, never, never throw chips at a driver. That's cool, man. It's a great mixture. This, I mean, even though John Trent's, I mean, obviously I can't swear, but he's not a very nice guy. You're still kind of rooting for him because he's the only thing we've got to hold on to. And I love that about this movie. It's I mean, like I say, it's Lovecraftian lore. It's based on the work of H.P. Lovecraft. But it's like he's a sleazy character. but when, for me, in Neil's performance, when reality really starts to slip for him, the performance is incredible because you see it in his face that he can't figure it out. It's a great performance.
It's funny, isn't it? Because he's such an ordinary-looking bloke.
Oh, he's great, isn't he? Sam Neill is. I've always related to him in that way, I think.
Yeah, but then he manages to sort of. It's like with Event Horizon stuff like that. It goes from being the sort of nerdy scientist to the big bad.
Yeah.
And he does have that ability to really hit that intensity. I think partly it's his voice. He's really good with his voice.
He's got this kind of. He's got it. Pardon me. It's like you see the everyman to him, but it's that dark humor. Sam Neill's always got a dark humor about him. I mean, watching it, I think in real life. I mean, obviously I don't know the guy, but just following his X feed, it's his Twitter feed. You can see he has a laugh with stuff, but he's got a strange sense of humor, and it comes across in his work, I think.
Yeah, most Aussie.
Guy. I mean, him and Brian Brown are always messing about together. They're always doing stuff online and cracking each other up. But I love this. I mean, all this poor man's process here in the car with. I mean, that's great. This scene. It's so minimal, and it's like I say, what Carpenter did so well is that he's got such a great grasp of cinematic language that he can do scenes like this with nothing. You
see that scene where that shot with the push bike? I know that almost could be out of a David Lynch movie.
Yeah. Hi, Neil. Is Kiwi, New Zealand? Here and there. Hi.
Yeah. He's a Derek.
Anyone else always weirded out when they hear Sam Neill in an Aussie accent? It slips, doesn't it? Sometimes he has got a pretty good Hollywood accent, hasn't he? Like his
he's fairly neutral, isn't he? That's the thing. He doesn't sound overtly American. He doesn't sound overtly New Zealander, I guess.
I mean, his back catalogue is just so varied, man. He did a great film called The Dish about the guys in the desert who were the ones that sent the signal to television of the guys walking on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And he plays this operator, and the whole responsibility is on his head in it. It's a comedy, but it's a great performance. But he does the darkness in this so well, I think, because he's got that edge. And I think because you love him, because he's Sam Neill, it really helps in this. Even though he's that sleazy character I mentioned earlier on. It's Sam Neill. He's a lovable guy. But when it all starts to fall apart, man...
This horror just keeps happening in threes, doesn't it? So, yeah. We get this sort of recycling of these little horrors. It's like with the alley scene, it happens like 3 times, and this has happened 3 times where they see that kid on the bike, and it gets progressively worse each one. It's almost like he's having rewrites.
I know what you mean. Minnie's just said there, anyone who grew up with 80s and 90s industrial will recognize many of the samples taken from the film. I remember, I don't think it was this, but it was Prince of Darkness with Aphex Twin. And Aphex Twin in Introducing used the Dream from Prince of Darkness throughout the LP or the album. It was amazing. I think that was the first time I heard a Carpenter movie sampled. But it's a great score, this. I mean, he's got that rockin' beginning, but then he builds this atmosphere up with the voices underneath. I think it was Jim Lang that he collaborated with on this one.
Didn't they toy with casting Neil as Bond? He and David Warbeck
yes,
would have been.
There's a screen test for Living Daylights. There's a screen test for Living Daylights with Sam Neill. It's really interesting. It's on the I've got the old gold Bond box set, and there's a special feature where you see Neil's test. It's pretty cool, man. Mm-hmm. He actually says Bond, James Bond, and it's weird hearing Sam Neill say it.
It'd make an interesting. Because Daniel Craig obviously has that kind of dark Bond thing going on, as Timothy Dalton did as well. He would have made an interesting one in that respect. A little bit of edge to the character.
I've always been a bit of a dark horse with Bond. I really like Diamonds Are Forever, that weird one that Sean Connery did. That's just total campy, over the top craziness. Yeah. Look at this beautiful transition, though. He did this with so little, just with light. That's great. That's a great scene to show them crossing over into this new reality. And this was the first movie as well that he kind of messed with those flash cuts, wasn't it?
I guess so. I like the little shots to the kind of like, it looks like train windows or whatever. It's like, it looks like the edge of a film almost.
Cool, man. It does. That was excellent.
But yeah, it's the lighting is just another one of those amazing things. He really does play with light and dark, and it's as much about what you don't see as what you do see. And like I say, I'm a lighting guy. That's kind of my thing. Is it isn't just about what you see; it's about what you don't see or what you only half see. It's just
the minimal things that he used to do it. He's an incredible director. He always worked better on a lower budget. I mean, I think a lot of them do, don't they? A lot of the directors.
There's a reason for that as well. You have a higher budget, you get to do exactly what is in your head. You try to anyway. There's a drive and an expectation that you kind of deliver that. When you're on a lower budget, you're constrained and you have to think of ways around. So you don't get the film that you want, but you probably get the film that you deserve.
I mean, look at that shot, man. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's that's probably a 10 to 22 wide there. Look at those beautiful colors in the trees.
It's sort of panning.
That's beautiful. It always reminded me of Hitchcock's Trouble with Harry. Mm-hmm. This New England. This is a substitute for Castle Rock, right? I mean, you've got Sutter Kane, Stephen King. Mm-hmm. Stephen King's a friend of Carpenter's.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear that the character's sort of based on, at least a little bit of a friendly jab at Stephen King.
It's great. Earlier on there, one of the scenes, she says he outsells Stephen King.
See, that's the thing. I kind of looked at this when I first saw it. I didn't really see so much Lovecraft. I saw more Stephen King.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
In terms of kind of like, certainly the kind of public, or at least the media perception of someone like Stephen King. How can someone have these horrors going on in their head and be normal, that kind of stuff.
I mean, Carpenter said it was one of the things that drew him to the script, because obviously it was a Michael DeLuca script. He did do a rewrite, from what I understand. So it was Mike DeLuca's script, but Carpenter did do a rewrite, as he usually did, because he's he likes to do what he wants to do. But he said one of the things that drew him to it was at this time, which I think's worth discussing about this, is that this came out well before Scream. It was 3 years before Scream. And it's a very self-referential movie. I mean, the main character is a character in a book, and he realizes he's a character in a book.
Yeah.
And his world ends when the reader shuts the book, or when the film ends.
I think it's, you get that phrase, it's a meta film, which gets thrown away. Right. It gets thrown around an awful lot. This kind of is, but it's in a different way. It's meta within its own universe.
Yeah, within this weird Lovecraftian Stephen King mix.
Whereas something like Scream is sort of meta in the genre, in general. This is
Yeah.
kind of like within its own world. So it's sort of like looking at this world and then going, kind of what's wrong with it, and it's very self-referential to the kind of the nature of the world, which we don't know yet at this point in the movie.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting because it's the clues are there, and it does take that second view before you start seeing some of that stuff. Because the first time you come in cold, you don't know what the nature of this world is.
It blew my mind, Glenn, the first time I saw this because I didn't know what to expect. Blew my mind. I mean, at that time, I'd known a couple of Carpenter's films. I mean, I was still young then, but I'd known The Thing a lot. I'd known Halloween and They Live. And I saw this, and it just, wow. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. And it blew my mind because it's a mix of so much stuff.
I mean, this shot here, for instance, is like inside the greenhouse type, the glass house. And it's just like this what looks like an idyllic place from the outside. You look at it from the inside, there's just this little bit of decay and things like that. There's always something slightly wrong. And a lot of it, is, the camera angles, the way it's shot, the cinematography is, it's often slightly skewed. It's not quite normal. There's almost an austereness about some of the angles and the kind of the way the camera moves and what it chooses to look at, the width of the shots and heights of the shots. Like when he's going over the train track, it's very, very high shot. The car's a little thing. It's not that far away, but it's a little thing, and it's more landscape than it is the kind of the center of the what you should be looking at, which is them.
Yep.
So there's all these things that he uses to really kind of distort the world and kind of, it's informing you as a viewer as well about the nature of these people. But like I say, first time you watch it, you don't know that.
He's a master at it, man. I mean, he's such a student of film that, I mean, knowing Carpenter, he probably picked that kind of stuff up from Orson Welles or someone, I mean, he's, not that he would copy Orson Welles, but just that whole feel like you're talking about just that little bit of offness to the whole thing, and I loved it. I think that's the whole movie's got that feel for me.
It's been a while since I've seen this film, but I do seem to remember there's parts of it ends up feeling a bit like a Ken Russell movie.
Oh, totally.
The visuals
I can hear
and all that kind of stuff. I mean, as a filmmaker that you could talk about till you're blue in the face.
Oh, Ken Russell's amazing, man. Listomania, I mean, he's brilliant. I mean, he's a filmmaker who, when he couldn't get funding to make movies, he made them in his back garden with a postman,
Yeah.
He was a huge... I mean, we were talking about before, doing things for the love of it. That guy did it just because he didn't want to do anything else.
Ken
you
Loach
got
does the same,
women in
doesn't he?
love and the rainbow, and I mean, he's amazing.
And Ken Loach is a guy that would never be able to make a commercial film.
Oh, yeah.
Not these days. But he just does what he can with what he can. Jess Franco, towards the end of his career, when he hit the 90s, it was basically get to a point where he couldn't lift a camera. So he'd go around he switched to digital. Started using that as a medium. David Lynch even eventually ended up playing with digital. So you do what you can with what you got.
Totally.
Very,
I mean,
very
especially guys like Franco and Lynch, who, I mean, Franco was working on obviously small budgets.
Yeah, micro budgets is almost nothing.
I mean, I can imagine. I mean, I was shot on when I was a kid. I was shooting. Well, not a kid, but when I first started making films, I was shooting on DV tape because that was the cheapest thing I could buy.
I'll just interrupt. The church there is one of the ones that people constantly look at and go, "Is that a matte painting?" And it's not. It's real.
It's beautiful. I think it was a Greek, if I remember. It was a Greek Orthodox church, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
If I remember rightly.
And this is the thing. This is one of those moments where you start slipping into this kind of thing, which I kind of look at and go, there's just a little something which is a bit Ken Russell about that kind of thing. Even Tim Burton, actually.
Totally. That candid angle there of the church and Jesus was totally Ken Russell. I mean, the stuff he was reading from the book there, that was, I think it was from Haunter in the Dark, if I remember rightly.
And the
I
angles
was a big Lovecraft fan when I was a teenager.
Sam Neill sort of stood in the doorway there, and there's a lot of the shots in this movie which are very square on, which is very Pasolini.
Oh, I can see that too.
Yeah, it's that very kind of like stiff sort of like straight on 90 degree, straight there. So you get that kind of verticality and all that kind of stuff, all the straight lines going up.
And here he comes, Vigo. Was it Vigo the Terrible?
I think I thought you were making a Ghostbusters 2.
Here he is. That's the guy. That's Vigo. Wilhelm. I can't remember his second name.
Yeah.
He was. I think he was from Belgium, if I remember rightly.
But
he was a wrestler back in the day.
But has he bought Zagul?
I love this scene, Johnny boy. It's cool, that one.
Mm.
Look at that editing too, man. It's fantastic.
That's almost a kind of nod with the kid in the door. It's almost like Firestarter or something, isn't it?
Well, do you know the story of Firestarter? The Carpenter was supposed to direct it,
right?
Which I'm always good at about, but I'm a huge fan of Mark Lester's Firestarter.
Mm.
Tangerine Dream are one of my favorite groups, and I love their score for Firestarter. But I would love to have seen John Carpenter making Firestarter, but I almost made it because the thing failed. They sacked him at the last minute.
This is getting very Omen all of a sudden as well, isn't it?
It's cool, man. It's total horror. It's just a different... For me, it starts to take you into a different universe now.
Mm.
It's like People Under the Stairs. You know, you've got the horror of the dogs, but it's the church, and where are they now? They're in this weird town. What reality is this? I think it's fantastic. And this is kind of more reminiscent of his later stuff. More like Village of the Damned.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was reading on IMDb, apparently one of these guys really got hurt.
Yes, I think this guy, he got bit quite badly.
Look at that shot, man, the pullback and the track end.
Yeah.
That's such a Carpenter shot, low wide lens, and zoom in, you know, he's great at that kind of stuff.
See, the thing is, these dogs would have been actual sort of security dogs.
Yeah.
Cause
I mean, some of the close-ups, you can see the fangs have been clipped.
Well, you don't get normal dogs to do that. It just doesn't happen. So, they're probably kind of like trained security dogs.
I mean, this is a great scene for Julie Carmen as well. I mean, I love her performance in this. I mean, like I said at the beginning of the stream, guys, I'm sorry if I'm gushing a little bit about this film, but I really admire it. I do. I think her performance.
That's why I've got you on here, man.
We did. That's great. And this is where Sam Neill, you can see the wheels ticking in his head, or John Trent's head, I should say. Because he thinks he knows as much as everybody else, man, but he doesn't. His whole world's about to get turned upside down. It's great. Yes, Sam Neill, John Smith, Damien, Omen 3. It's a connection there with James Warner. David Warner. David Warner was in the first Omen 2, wasn't he?
Mm.
There's a lot of things in this. I mean, Francis Bay and David Warner were in Twin Peaks.
That's a series that got...
They both appear in this.
As far with the Omen and stuff like that, the Omen series, a lot of people consider the third one to be the worst one. I don't think it is the worst one.
I think it's fantastic. I really love the feeling of at the end when everybody starts to die in Omen 3. And he's killing all his staff's family and stuff. It's
I think
terrifying.
It's a series of films that just gets more and more biblical as it goes along. Yeah, it does get this. It gets more outrageous as it sort of moves along. But I mean, the second one is always my favourite. I think that is a really, really good film. It's the second one.
Second one is Lance Henriksen. Second one with
I think so. Yeah.
With the guy from the Wild Bunch, William Holden.
I just the kid in that Damien, who plays Damien. I can't remember the actor's name. Just amazing work. It's, those moments where you see him sort of like disintegrating from being essentially still a fairly innocent character through to the realization and kind of like going, shit, I've got tons of power. Fuck the world.
I love the ending of Omen 3 with that beautiful light in the church and there's a fox hunt. And I remember watching that. Don Davis is in that too, who we should mention, because he was in Exorcist 3, right? Mm-hmm. And, man, great actor. And that bit when he realizes he's made a mistake by following Damien's terrifying. And the bit with the iron when the woman kills a baby, it's a terrifying scene. I think that whole build up at the end of Omen 3. It's a great series. I think I like all three of them.
Yeah.
Less said about Omen 4, the better indeed. It was terrible.
Just the thing with unnecessary sequels, isn't it? You know, because I mean, the first three felt like a natural kind of progression from early childhood, adolescence, to adulthood. That is, it's an element of that.
Look at Mrs. Pickman here, man. She's so cool. That Frances Bay. She's a great actress.
She is. Yeah, the amount of times she sort of appeared, and she is very, very much a character. She plays this kind of character one way or another.
She's got her husband there tied up naked at her feet.
This is another one. I mean, you look at her eyes and the makeup that's on her. She's clearly, there's something wrong with this character, just by looking at them.
That's it, man. It's like this is the turning point now. He's stuck. Oh, it's great. He's stuck in his own. Well, he's stuck in a narrative not of his own making now. He's totally losing control of everything. He can't leave. Nobody's answering his questions. That's awesome.
Omen 4, haven't seen any of the sequels, but wasn't Omen 4 made by the guy who did Halloween 5?
Dominique Girard, was it? I quite liked Halloween 5, I remember. It wasn't my favourite of the after sequels was always Halloween 6, I think, the one with Paul Rudd's introduction.
I pretty much gave up after 3.
Right. I quite liked it. I think it was The Curse of Michael Myers. That was the one I really liked. I think it was 6.
I always felt like it was kind of just running through the motions after 3.
I think it was kind of my generation's one, Halloween 6, and it was the whole grunge thing, and I kind of liked it. But I think it was the first time I saw Paul Rudd. He was great in that. I thought he plays Tommy Wallace. This is great, man. Vigo the Terrible there. Get out. It's a great performance. Look at that beautiful lighting on the church.
Yeah. Again, you see their faces, and it's just huge shadows. They're literally just lit to millimeter perfect, just to catch the highlights of their, the raised aspects of their faces. It's just so
beautiful.
Darkness
the way that Carmen's got her hair there over her face with the side thing. It's really good looking, and that kid's creepy, and everything's. That's it, man. Today's Mommy's Day. That's it. World's turned upside down now.
And this does feel very Stephen King.
Yes, indeed.
It is one of those kind of like you're getting towards the midpoint in a Stephen King story. This is where the zombie children and shit turn up. I was just reading about the Lost book of Stephen King. Is it Hunting?
I don't know. I didn't know
it's
that.
It's out of the Bachman books.
I read the collection. So I read Road Work, and I read The Long Walk, and I read The Running Man and stuff. I got the Bachman collection and read, I think, was it 5 of them in there?
Rage,
yes. Rage was cool.
Yeah, because that book, basically, Stephen King says, don't print it again.
It was a bit creepy considering that he was a teacher, wasn't it?
Oh,
and you've got the kid in the class, and he takes the class hostage.
And that was a problem, you see, because there was some school killings. And the people that were involved with it were kind of like kids.
It was a very creepy story. And like the geek tries to embarrass the jock because he's got a gun and stuff. And I remember it was quite terrifying in that way. Beautiful sets here as well. It's great production design, this. He always did great, didn't he, with his sets like Precinct 13 and stuff. He was the great top of the lighthouse in the fog. He really knew how to work with small areas, low budget, small sets.
Ghosts of Mars, that felt a bit odd.
It was we have kind of always. I like Ghosts of Mars. I guess I'm in the minority there because a lot of people give it a lot of stick. But I'm a big sci-fi fan. I'm a big Ice Cube fan as well.
I think that's probably one of the things. I mean, there was a few things which felt out of place for a John Carpenter movie.
It was like he always used new technology. So when Halloween came out, he used the Panaglide. I mean, when this was 94, he started to use ILM and Industrial Light Magic and KMB, and there's a little bit CGI in this. I mean, this is just after T2 and Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And a lot of people often give the CGI in this a bit of stick because it's rough, but I don't mind it. I think it adds to the story.
Yeah.
But I think when he got to Ghosts of Mars and Vampires, he was really starting to play with new editing techniques. And I mean, he was with Ghosts of Mars, you've got that fade after fade after fade after fade. So again, similar to this, it's playing with different realities because she's in a dream and then it fades into a dream. And I always kind of like that about it, Ghosts of Mars. I think it's unfairly judged, I think.
I like this scene. She should be going up to him and trying to bribe him to make a happy ending.
Julie Carmen, the movie.
We win the lottery and get laid every single hour.
Jürgen Prochnow there as well. He's a great actor. From Wolfgang Petersen's Das Boot, right? That was the one that made him.
There's another one of those actors that, ostensibly looks fairly ordinary, but has an intensity behind him.
Yeah, Kieran's just mentioned there the Steadicam there with the Panaglide. It was Steadicam was used in, I think it was Exorcist 2 first, if I believe rightly. John Borman.
I liked Peter Jackson's Steadicam in Bad Taste. He built it himself. It was like a little arm with a rod with a concrete block on the bottom.
That's what you've got to do, man. I mean, look at Sam Raimi with the wood cam and Evil Dead.
Yeah,
just a plank of wood with a camera in the middle.
Yeah,
so two guys running.
Gives you that wafting sort of. Very quickly, going to grab another beer. If I can untangle myself.
Yeah, man. Cheers, Rip there. You know, the Ghosts of Mars. I really enjoy watching Ghosts of Mars too. I'm a pretty big fan of it. I dig that kind of rock soundtrack from Anthrax. I think it's a decent movie. I mean, not his greatest, but I enjoy watching. I watch it quite a lot. Uwe Ball's House of the Dead, right, with Jürgen Prochnow, of course. Talk about a fall from grace. Hey, Collector Adam, you alright, dude?
Josh Hadley did an interview with Uwe Ball. It actually went really well. And that is one thing that Josh is very good at. And I think, considering Uwe Ball's reputation, it was quite an interesting job.
I mean, Uwe Ball, I remember, I think it was Blood Rain that he did. I had some moments in it. I think Michael Madsen was in it, but I mean, it was like one of my favorite guys is Dennis Hopper, and I mean, I'm not by any means defending Uwe Ball or anything, but it was, even the bad ones, it's hard to make, right? I mean, even the terrible ones, somebody's put their blood, sweat, and tears into it.
Yeah. He approaches it like very, very, very much like I think a lot of the old school 70s and 80s exploitation directors.
Yeah,
which
I
is
know
kind
what
of
you
interesting. The old Euro ones. It's kind of like a modern day sort of. Well, I wouldn't say Jess Franco. Maybe. I'm not sure which one would be an analogous.
No, I know what you're saying. I mean, I admire him just because he's got a creative output. You know, I mean, they're not great, but I mean, like I say, Blood Rain. I watched that a couple of times. I've seen House of the Dead a couple of times. It was, I mean, he did the Christian Slater. I love the PC game. Can't remember the name. Afraid of the Dark.
Yeah.
Alone in the Dark. Sorry, Alone in the Dark.
Yeah.
And I thought that was okay. I thought that got unfairly panned. It kind of jumped on the back of Resident Evil, I think.
Yeah, I mean it.
But it was all right.
It wasn't great, but it was what it was.
Yeah, John says the commentaries are worth the price of DVDs. I've listened to a few too, the Uwe Ball ones. Some of the commentaries are great. Albert Pune did some great ones too on some of his bad films, and it's worth listening to them talk about the mistakes to learn from them.
If you can find entertainment in it, then it's fine. I don't think you go into his films expecting, high art or anything.
God, that model gives me chills there. It hurts. That looks it's cut together so well that there's a moment where you can almost tell it's a model, I think, but it's that cut with it. It's a gruesome cut, that with the axe.
Axes seem to be a thing in this, don't they?
Totally, man. Dismemberment. I remember watching Carpenter in an interview and somebody said, "What are you afraid of?" And he said the same things as other people, man. I'm afraid of dismemberment. I'm afraid of mutilation, afraid of illness. He said the same things everybody else is. I love those practical effects. That was a throwback to The Thing there, wasn't it, with the whips under the door?
Yeah.
I think it was, if I'm right, it was K&B. It's Greg Nicotero, Berger, and
Kurtzman.
who's the other guy in the three of them?
Kurtzman. Nicotero and Berger.
So ILM did the digital stuff. Look at this, man. These are great. I was recently looking at some Comic-Con photographs online, and I think it was Nicotero that brought out some of the models for this, because he still kept them, and some of them are great, the creatures. Excuse me for a moment. I'm just going to nip down and grab another beer.
Do it. Right. Now that he's not on headphones, and we can actually talk about him. By the way, watch the channel, John, just in case I've missed it before. I will get him to mention it at the end, and I will put something in the description as well once we're done. But it's John Rennie's Boneyard. I think that's it. It's very good. It is very good. He's really good at editing those stuff. What came first, us or the book? Interesting sort of look into kind of, interesting nod to the nature of the world. And it's one of the things I love about this movie is that you've got this whole kind of build up of his realization. And as his realization becomes more complete, his world is just coming down. It's breaking up. Thank you, the in-room. Yes, John's channel was very, very worth going over to. One of the most wonderfully enthusiastic guys I know. Oh, sorry, Adam. Beer is important. Oh. Sam Neill just got bitch slapped and he bitch slaps back. Well, see, the thing is, you just got to preempt your comments by going, right, don't go for a beer for a second. Brains are coming for you. You call it a pimp hand where you're from, okay. Oh dear. Hope you're doing well. I hope you had a good week. It's a short week this week, which is quite nice. I know we're at the weekend, and next couple of days, apparently I've got clear nights, so I'm going to be out with the scope over the weekend, which will be very, very nice. It's been precious few nights I've been able to do that this year. See, it's a funny thing, you know. I do photography, and I'm a lighting guy, so I choose two things that are kind of related, and then sort of go, give me as little light as possible. Has John gone down to the pub? Yes, it does. I reckon he has. I'm glad you're missing him, though. He was a little anxious about coming on. Oh, hello. Oh. Now, according to IMDb, they had a contortionist do this, right? Like it's very much like the Extro scene where you see the alien on the side of the road. So it's a contortionist doing that spider walk type thing. So they had the mask on the back of the head to make it look all really odd. And they guided the person by kind of like making noises. Here he is.
Black, sorry.
That's all right. Figured you'd gone down the pub.
I saw it, just smoked half a cigarette.
So you didn't go for beer, you went for a fag break, okay.
Well, half a cigarette. I thought about it. I need to quit mine. I keep trying, but...
Try cocaine. I binge watched all of John's videos this week. They're excellent, says the Henry.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
I think they're glad you're here this week.
Thank you for welcoming us. Well, Glenn, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if it wasn't for you.
Nah. Shucks.
Cheers, John. Just subscribe. That's great. Thanks, man. It's I just like I say it. It's just for the love of it. I love to talk movies, and this is heaven for me. This, especially talking about Mouth of Madness. It's a film I love. Look at that. I mean, just the wide frame cinematography there, the bleed of the lights. It's a beautiful looking film. I mean, a lot of people consider it Carpenter's last great hurrah, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's necessarily the case. It's just, you know, it's the thing. It's like you got like Cronenberg also kind of changed tack, and it is very easy for, you know, an audience to get sort of, I know this is what I want from this director. I mean, that is something that really constantly bugged George Romero. Was the whole kind of idea that, you know, the only films anybody wanted from him was zombie films.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I'm reading a lot about Wes Craven at the minute. I really want to do something about People Under the Stairs, because it's a movie I grew up watching. It was actually my sister. She hated horror movies, but she loved People Under the Stairs. So it was a movie I watched quite a lot growing up, and it's like Romero or Hooper or Carpenter. They're all these kind of old, well, not old hippies, but they grew up in the hippie generation, and they've all got something to say behind the work.
And it's funny with People Under the Stairs, it's got the same couple as in Twin Peaks.
Aye? It's
Everett McGill and
Wendy Roby.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favourite moments.
Nothing quite like seeing Big Ed running around in a gimp suit.
In a gimp suit, I know, but in Twin Peaks, there's that Miguel Ferrer, who again, he plays is it Rosenfield?
Yeah.
In Twin Peaks, and there's that bit when Big Ed's saying, you know, we went out and we got married, and we were shooting buckshot, and my God, some of that buckshot skipped off a rock and took out Nadine's eye.
And he's like...
and Rosenfield's trying to stop from laughing.
Yeah, it's just a look of realisation on his face when he hears it. It's like, oh God, here we go. Oh wait, what? This is getting interesting. And then it's like...
Kieran saying there, talking about Cinema Man, it's morning strength. I know exactly what you mean, Kieran. Some of the guys down the pub, when I go for a drink, I didn't know this, but they used to have bets about how long it would take before I started talking about movies when I went for beer. I'm the same. It's been my love forever. When everybody else was outside playing football, I was watching Steve McQueen movies. You know, it was.
See, that was a funny thing, because when we first met, and that was one of the first things. It's like the first time I'd ever been sort of recognised IRL.
Glenn, I'd quoted your work before when I was at college.
I know, doubtful.
You did a video about Cannibal Holocaust, and I was writing about certifications.
Yeah.
And I quoted some of your work.
Oh, well,
I couldn't believe it was you when I first met you. I was like, wow, I watch your stuff all the time.
I've made it.
But that's what's great about this, man. We're all in the same boat. This is what we love, man. You know.
It is one of the nice things about this little community, you know, because we're all sort of interested in the same thing. John talks about this stuff now. I've been talking about this for, you know, coming up to 14, 15 years.
Yeah.
But we've all got something to offer, you know. And Simon is someone that I followed before I started doing all this kind of stuff. I got kind of interested in his website and all that sort of stuff. It's an excellent resources, his website as well. So, you know, nice thing is we do this sort of stuff, and yeah. And I, you know, all the times that John and I talk about this kind of stuff as well, and I keep bugging him to come on, and we'll do this kind of thing.
Yeah, do you like her? John, People Under the Stairs. Aye, she's great. I know her from, she's in Escape from LA too, Carpenter movie. She plays the president's daughter in Escape from LA. She's a great actress. I think she was 17 when she did People Under the Stairs. It's a great performance.
I love this scene.
It's beautiful,
It's
isn't
like, how many horror films have scenes in a confessional? There is a real anxiety.
How midnight starts.
Yeah, there's a real anxiety about it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's in that confined space. I mean, how many ways can you shoot that? And it's a great scene.
It's not just that. I think it's the whole kind of act of confession is such a bearing of the soul kind of stuff. It makes you vulnerable. Plus, you're in that box.
I mean, this is the turning point. Now, this is my favorite scene. When Trent says, "I know who I am. Nobody pulls my strings." It's very powerful. It's great, great performance from Neil. I've said that about 20 million times, I know, but it's one of my favorite performances of his. And I really like this effect too. What's coming up, and a lot of people have complained about it, but I think it fits the story. This is it.
See, the cruelty of Stephen King.
Ah, man, I love that delivery there. Nobody pulls my strings. He's just losing everything that he is. It's a powerful scene.
It is a sort of Cronenbergian kind of effect with that door, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, sort of like things becoming flesh.
Like the cassette tape.
Yeah.
And Videodrome that breathes.
God, that's a movie that could be read about 15,000 times. 15,000 ways.
I mean, just the simple sets. I mean, I was a couple of weeks ago when I was reviewing this, I was reading about, and the production designer was talking about how they built the sets, so very simply. And that whole door is just made out of wood, and the stuff that looks like stone, it's pretty much flat stone, but they just emphasized all the curves with black paint to make it look like it was a stone surface. Just again, those beautiful techniques.
It's theatrical kind of set building techniques. When you build sets for the stage, you overemphasize the kind of depths and highlights, because otherwise, you know, from a distance it looks very flat. Same sort of thing they used to do with makeup in very old school TV, the very early days of TV. When you saw them, they looked like bloody pandas with the makeup on.
Well, I mean, we're talking about The Exorcist earlier on with Max von Sydow. It's almost theatrical makeup, isn't it?
Yeah,
the way that they age him and that, but it works.
But it works with the kind of perspective and the lights and all that kind of stuff. Oh, it's such a weird effect, that, isn't it? Where he pulls the face off.
I really like it. I know it's. I mean, like I say, this is 2 years after, or a year after Jurassic Park, just 2 years after T2. You know, I mean, digital effects was still just really growing, but I think that works for the context of the reality of the film.
But it's a callback to the bit where he's playing around with the poster in the alley, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cool. It is cool. I always liked it. Absolution with Richard Burton. That was Billy Connolly in that realm of horror, if I remember rightly. Did he have a cameo on that? I remember that it's about the boys' school, right? And the murder of the tramp. Was it Billy Connolly? Let us know if you know.
Collector Adam says one of the best confession scenes has to be in Exorcist 3, really well scripted and acted. Yeah, I fully agree.
It's cool. George C. Scott, if I had to count my favourite actors on one hand, he would be there.
That guy's just incredible.
Powerhouse of an actor. Some tortured demons. I read his biography when I was a teenager. He had a lot of demons going on inside of him, that guy, but it comes across on the screen. He's very powerful. Like in The Changeling, for example. He's fantastic in that movie. Or Dr. Strangelove. I remember the first time I saw C. Scott was in The Hustler with Paul Newman.
Yeah.
I think it was Jackie Gleason. And it was, I wasn't watching Paul Newman. I was watching George C. Scott. And he was just a guy sitting in the background with dark glasses on. And I think that was the moment I became a huge fan of his. And like I say, if I could count my favourite actors on one hand, C. Scott would be in there. He's a great, powerful actor, I think. His problems in his life, it's apparently very difficult to work with, but fantastic actor. Ah, cool. It was Billy Connolly. Cheers, Realm of Horror. It was a good movie, that one. I remember. It was really dark. Absolution. Brian Glover, too. Was Brian Glover Kess, right? He's the PE teacher. Look at that wall of monsters, man. That's fantastic practical effects. And this is Darth Vader's first film role, this as well. You'll see him in a second. Sorry, it's horrible to see, but recently I just watched the Star Wars when they redigitized them.
Right.
And they added Hayden Christensen in at the end.
Yeah.
Man, that was terrible.
It made no sense.
It was awful. But I think this was one of his first film roles. This is the kid on the bike. And this is a great flashback as well to the reality. There's the mill in the background, the kid on the bike, but it's not the horror kid now. It's a real kid. So are we back into the real world? Total Lovecraftian mythology. It's great. Yeah, man, Sam Neill's performance in Event Horizon, another great one. That scene with him and Lawrence Fishburne, you let me burn. It's a fantastic scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hayden Christensen's a Peter boy.
I always felt sorry for him after the Star Wars thing.
I know, he did a Vanishing on, was it 7th Street, which I quite liked, which was a very low budget horror.
I think he always kind of handled it reasonably well. Jake Lloyd had a much harder time.
Yeah.
I felt just, you can't feel anything but sorrow for someone like that.
I mean, I love how there's almost Easter eggs in this. I mean, the town's called Hobbs End. That's from Quatermass in the Pit. The tube station in Hammer Horrors, Quatermass in the Pit, not the original, but the Hammer Horrors. Yeah. The tube station was called Hobbs End, and I love that about Carpenter. It's almost like, I know we've talked about Tarantino a lot and Rob Zombie, how they homage or copy other films, but I love what Carpenter does with those little nods to what he loves.
They're not invasive. That's the big thing, I think. Rob Zombie's stuff is very, and Quentin Tarantino to a great degree. Although he seems to integrate it a little bit more kind of seamlessly. But there is that kind of like, oh, yeah, remember that, remember this, remember this. It's like, okay.
Look at that performance when he's questioning his own reality and looking in the mirror.
John says, I'll never forgive Return of the Jedi for editing out the legendary Wob Job song. I think it was Nub Nub, wasn't it?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. I bet he hated Sand a lot more after becoming a serious burn victim. Sand against leather must be murder.
But I think this, if I remember rightly from the commentary of this, the guy who's about to come into it was the production designer. I can't remember his name, but he has a cameo in this. The guy with the mustache who comes in a second. Just a bit of useless information there. Sorry, he comes back when he goes back, but yeah. I mean, look at the emotion on his face when he's realizing that he's not in control anymore.
And the thing is, it doesn't all happen at once. It's just little bits and pieces. You start kind of realizing along with him that that things ain't right.
Yeah, Kieran, you should seen Carpenter. The Homages in the Fog. Tommy Wallace's name turns up somewhere. That the main guy, who Tom Atkins plays, I can't remember his name now, but that was one of his friends, right? Nick Castle. So in the Fog, Tom Atkins' character is called Nick Castle, who was one of the guys that helped Carpenter write. I think he played the Shape, if I remember rightly. And Michael Myers was the UK distributor for Assault on Precinct 13.
I've had bus trips like this.
Time check, Adam. I think I'm on. What am I on? I'm on 1:18:30:40 at the minute. 1:18:40.
I'm about 7 seconds behind because my tablet wasn't responding.
Oh, what a great line. God's not supposed to be a hack or a writer. It's a smart script, man. It is. And like I say, it predated Scream. And I know one of the guys mentioned earlier as well about Jason and having the self-referential one for, was it Jason Lives?
Simon says, if Hayden Christensen was edited into Jedi as Anakin Skywalker, then why not Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan? It's a very good point.
It was just awful. I couldn't believe it. It's only the second time I've watched them. I watched them the first time around, and I just thought I'll give them another chance, man, but it was awful. I mean, there hasn't even been a decent copy of those released. The last unedited versions were the special edition DVDs from like 2003, I think.
Yeah,
and
they're the ones I've got.
They're not even Laserdisc copies. They're not very good.
They were Laserdisc rips.
Well, sorry, they were.
Yeah. But people forget that Laserdisc wasn't exactly but it was sub DVD.
Yeah.
And the way they framed it, because it was just a very, very small box in the middle of the screen. It was an awful presentation. It was literally George Lucas kind of going, they want it, fuck them, have it. Absolute minimal effort. Which is a real shame. But is one of the reasons I don't have an awful lot of respect for George Lucas.
Oh,
I have respect for him in certain respect, for certain things, but when it comes to a lot of stuff, I have a problem.
God, this movie, man, it seems to be over in a flash. I can't believe we're on the home straight already. I love that reveal there. Just seeing the jump scare there. It's fantastic. The enter of the incredible blue tint. It's fantastic. We'll come back to Harglow now, and I love this. This was something I was reading about Carpenter, and Carpenter said he wanted to get this in, which is, it's almost like the corporate guys don't care the world's falling apart because they're making money off it. And Trent says, look, this book's going to kill people. And he says, well, let's hope so, man. The movie comes out next month. It's like, this is what we're talking about there, about the hippie-ish kind of thing. This is a stab at the establishment. Because Harglow's making money. He hasn't read the books. He doesn't care. He just wants the cash.
It's Carpenter. He's a very left-leaning guy. It's... You do get, like I say, I mean, you get the other end of it as well, with like certain directors are much more right-leaning. In fact, some of them kind of express their politics through that, as do on people on the left. It's one of the interesting things, though, when it comes to sort of that political kind of aspect to horror films, that a lot of people really don't appreciate is you can talk about things and put them in a kind of context which says more than. It allows people to hear you a lot clearer than if you kind of sat there and sort of like says, these are my political demands.
Yeah.
Be it George Romero's stuff, which has a certain kind of racial and sort of commercial kind of discussions going on. Like Night Riders, for instance.
Yeah.
particularly something like Night Riders is quite a political movie in some respects.
Oh, very much so. It's and probably his most personal film.
Oh, absolutely. I think for me, it's one of his best films.
I'd put it up there. I think it's a great. I mean, the performances for one, but it's almost like Night Riders is a microcosm for him and his crew. You know.
I mean, it's such a
fighting against the establishment. He's got his own code.
It's a beautiful film, and the characterization's wonderful. The story arc is amazing. Everything about it is probably one of the most perfect films. Martin's close up there, but I think Night Riders just edges it out in terms of it just being a wonderful story as much as anything. Because you really feel something at the end of that film. But you got that kind of stuff. You got Cronenberg stuff is very political. All these kind of directors that have that sort of stuff, but it's not the sort of thing you sort of look at and go, oh, it's lecturing me. It's not. It's just sort of putting you in a position where you're kind of told a story with a certain slant. Axe again.
No, I totally agree. I mean, it's just listen to what you were saying there. I remember reading a book when I was a student about Pasolini, and Pasolini said in his opinion, I'm not sure I agreed with it, but he said all filmmaking is political in some way because you're making something and you're putting it out there.
So I wouldn't necessarily say that.
So
I mean,
it's political.
I think all good filmmaking is political.
Yeah.
But obviously, Hollywood has a tendency to try to be as apolitical as possible. I know that's a controversial thing to say, but they're not interested in.
I'd agree.
They're not really interested in controversy because that's bad for business, and Hollywood is business. You just look at with the writers and actors strike at the moment, particularly with that one piece of shit that kind of like went, we'll just wait till they start losing their homes. Like,
man, I know that was terrible, wasn't it?
Like,
I mean, we're all going through that, aren't we, at the minute? I mean, God, I've had some terrible bosses lately. I mean, I've been kind of lucky. I've just come off 2 years of editing a couple of movies with. I mean, I was very pleased. I was working on them about PTSD, and we've been working on these films for 2 years, and they've just finished. But I was able to take a couple of weeks off because I had to chill out because it was such a stressful time dealing with everything. And I mean, obviously, I'm going to get back to work, but it was a stressful time, and we're all dealing with bosses, and times are really hard, man. It's tough.
Simon says, I say Carpenter is centre-left, he's a full-blown capitalist. Well, I mean, it is the system that he lives in, I live in, you live in.
Oh, well, I agree. I mean, you watch Carpenter online, he does everything to sell anything he can.
But you have to. I mean, it's at the end of the day. Someone like Franco, for instance, again, he was a guy that did an awful lot of work just to put food on the table and a roof over his head.
I mean, I follow him on social media, Carpenter, and he's always selling stuff. He's always trying to sell that there's a new version of The Fog Out with a doll of Adrienne Barbeau, or there's this, there's that. I mean, I went to see him twice when he was touring live, and it was all about merchandise, and you can meet him for an extra $300 and all that kind of stuff, Yeah,
no, I mean, that's the thing. It's his livelihood as much as anything. I wouldn't say that's necessarily selling out, but it is. It is. You want to live comfortably. This is the world we live in. It is a capitalist society that he lives in, I live in, you live in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be a little careful about that as a judgment. Personally.
Oh, totally. I totally agree. I mean, I've got no judgment on him at all for it. I mean, I think I would. If you've got something that you can make money off, do it. Especially with your own creativity. But
Simon says Hollywood seems more interested in pushing woke garbage than entertaining films. I would say that there's a reason why they might be pushing that stuff. It's because it sells.
It sells. It is. It's to a new audience, isn't it?
It is.
It's to a new audience. It was like I remember when A24 started calling films elevated horror. And it was like, well, you take the horror out of The Shining, it's a domestic abuse film, or you take the horror out of The Changeling, it's a film about a guy who's lost his wife and kid and he's trying to get on with it. They're all elevated horror if you look at it like that.
Now you're in trouble when you're in a padded cell and the blood is on the outside of the door.
It's fantastic. That whole scene, the editing and everything's great. It was, I mean, in one ear I've got Mouth of Madness and I've got you in the other ear, but just to hear the screaming and the soundscape and that last scene, it's chilling. I was getting chills. Listen to it. I love this shot when it pans down the hall. I totally stole that. And something I did.
You homaged it. For legal
yes.
reasons.
Yep.
Excuse me, landlord, I need a new shirt. I've filled this one with doodles already.
I mean, just the background here when he brings the radio in, and you can hear that the world's been destroyed. It's incredible. It's just an immense feeling of I don't know. There's an atmosphere of doom and dread that I've never gotten from many other films at all.
See, this is just another one of those scenes though, with the shot is very symmetrical. You've got that sort of.
It's beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, vanishing point and that kind of stuff. And it cuts into the Whitehall again. It's straight down the middle.
John Smith homage, French for rip-off, indeed. Oh, I love this. This is one of my favorite endings in movie history.
Simon says, but it doesn't sell though. 2016 Ghostbusters. Yeah, it was a bit more than just the woke thing with that one. To be honest with you, there was a lot going on with that.
Just that haunting score in the background. He's holding the notes. That's total John Carpenter atmosphere. Look at that widescreen shot, man. That's incredible. And this,
now this is just total apocalypse at the end, isn't it? Yeah.
All the people behind him in the street, and that you don't trust your loved ones is on the radio. Get away from everybody. Lock yourself indoors. Don't go out if you haven't got to. It's the end of the world, man. It's incredible. And he does it with sound. It's craftsmanship to the max.
And it's presented by New Line Cinema.
It is. And this is it. This is it's incredible. And now he knows 100% that it's the end, and he loses it.
There's just not enough popcorn in the world, is there?
I do. I just think it was a little bit ahead of its time, this movie. I think if it had came out in 98, maybe it's even 97, I think it might have been a big hit. But I mean, who am I? I don't know that for sure.
I kind of get the feeling to some degree that, people are expecting something different from a John Carpenter movie. Because this isn't, what I would call a typical John Carpenter movie in some respects. Because the kind of story that it's telling, in a way it's telling it.
God, that's so chilling. It's a chilling moment. And that's it. That's the end of John Trent, man. That's horrible. To me, that's one of the most apocalyptic moments in movies. That's the end of that guy's world. It's the end of his existence. When that cuts to black, he's gone. Ah, man, gives us chills.
Doesn't he get time to go to the lobby? Let's all go
Get
to the lobby.
Some treats. Well, man, I hope you guys have enjoyed watching that as much as I have, because I love that movie. I think it's one of his masterpieces. I do. I think it's incredible.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun. I mean, I enjoyed it even more, I think, this time around than I've ever enjoyed it before.
Because you have me seeing how good Sam Neill is every 20 minutes.
It's just fun talking about it. Because there is a lot going on with this film, it has to be said. Great mystery of this film: who's changing the rules at the cinema at the end? Right, you remember the guy from
Sutter Kane?
You remember the guy from Demons with the mask on? It'll be him.
Is that the guy that gets his head pushed on the pike at the end?
Yeah. It was a bit rebar, wasn't it?
That's a great apocalyptic ending. When they get outside and they jump in the back of the Jeep and the city's on fire. That's a really good apocalyptic ending. I think that's one of my favourite bits of the movie.
It's a weird film, though. It's such a weird. I never got my head around with Demons the helicopter falling through the through the roof.
That's it. I know it's just the magic of cinema. It's like that guy who wrote the Dashiell Hammett stories when he said, "Just if you get stuck, just bring a gun in." It's like the roof
That's
just
correct,
smashes
Kieran.
in.
Yeah. It is weird. It's like it is a literal Deus Ex Machina. Just this machine comes to save the day. It's the god.
Yeah, They Live, Realm of Horror. They Live is a masterpiece as well. It is. I have to say. I mean, but you can probably tell I've got an affinity for this film. But I mean, his other work's incredible too. They Live's probably one of the most important, for me, one of the most important films of the 1980s. I think it says a lot more about that decade than a lot of the other work does.
Yeah, again, it's getting a sort of political aspect. George Romero was never really. I don't think he was deliberately political. I've said it before, where he kind of, if you look at the interviews with him, and he talks about his work and stuff as from early on, while he's been making it, just after he's made it, then through the years after, his opinion of the film seems to change.
It does. He listens to the audience, doesn't he, a lot, Romero?
I think he gets a lot of that from there. I think it's not to say that he doesn't that he didn't put that stuff in there, but I don't think it was as deliberate as some. John Carpenter is deliberately political.
Pardon me. Yep.
When he puts stuff in, certainly with like They Live, that is a overtly political movie.
Without a doubt. I mean, he said it was his answer to Reaganomics, right? He said I saw the world as it was, and I wrote that script.
Yeah, Videodrome is a very political movie as well. It's a very philosophical movie.
I mean, in a weird roundabout way, it's got a relation to Mouth of Madness, Videodrome, because it's about how media can affect you.
Yeah.
And Mouth of Madness is about, especially at that time, it was about how media was affecting, how horror was affecting its audience. Yeah. It's like we're saying.
And he's sort of pointing at it going, well, how you think it's bad for you? How do you think it is for the characters in it?
Oh man, I know that. Well, like I see that for me, that ending, it's so chilling and apocalyptic because that guy's world ends when the credits roll.
Yeah.
It's wow. I mean, it blew my mind then. It still blows my mind now. I think it's a great movie.
I imagine
underrated.
Because it is a very abrupt ending. In some respects,
same way the cinema ends, same way you shut the book after the last chapter. It just bang.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best analogy for it is the book being closed at the end. It's,
and then you get that kick-ass score as well. I would have rather had this than Enter Sandman. It has to be said. Like I say, I was lucky enough to see Carpenter live when he was touring, and man, this was one of the highlights of the nights. He played this, and it's a rocking tune live. It is. It's a really rocking tune when he does it live.
It's interesting to like kind of like I've been doing those kind of tours. It's a weird because there's this sort of extra life to his films, which I think he would probably agree with what I'm about to say in terms of it's kind of like how the films are for his fans when he does this kind of stuff. It's not just playing the soundtrack. It's kind of almost translating them into kind of how the fans perceive those pieces of music. So, yeah.
I mean, he really moved with the times, too. I mean, I remember Ghosts of Mars, when the DVD first came out of Ghosts of Mars. I presume it's on the later releases. I have got the Indicator one, but I haven't watched the special features yet, where you've got Buckethead on there, you've got Anthrax playing on there, and he was bringing in the new guys to play with.
Yeah.
The guys that he was interested in,
Minty.
And I love that about Carpenter. I think everything he did, he had, maybe up until the Ward, he always had some kind of interest in it himself.
Minty says there was way more politically related plots back in films back in the 80s and 70s than today. Yeah, because I think, I think the general public was more overtly political. I think that's not necessarily true now, because I think people are, over the last, 6 years, particularly 7 years, have been kind of very, very politically charged. There is a massive schism between the left and the right. And that's particularly in American politics, that has become, very, very obvious. And I think I'd be surprised if someone doesn't really kind of key into that, as a filmmaker, because there's a lot of material there.
I mean, the other week I was reading about Chainsaw Massacre, and Toby Hooper mentioned that one of the big things that was on his mind when he made that was the government, and it was that we didn't trust anybody anymore because of Tricky Dicky. You know, and he said that it was kind of about capitalism in a way, because they'd sacked, you know, they've been sacked from the slaughterhouse. You know, they couldn't get work, so that these new invaders, this new kind of now these new young people coming in, became the new meat. And they were actually selling them. So the film had like an underlying thing about capitalism, and I found that so interesting.
I think, you know, I think like with Romero, he's probably assigned it as a later thing. I mean, it's never quite struck me as being that with that film. Far be it from me to, you know, disagree
No, it was
with
just
the
like I
director,
say, it
but
was a throwaway thing that he mentioned in an interview I was watching with Hooper, and I've been proper bang into Hooper again.
yeah,
I just watched the Mangler and stuff. But he's a solid director, man. Some of his works are incredible.
I mean, I will always hold his, you know, Texas Chainsaw as the finest work. That is just such an incredible film. But I think, you know, it's a
big
film.
fan of Life Force. I really like Life Force.
I mean, Texas Chainsaw was really a film that was as much a confluence of what was going on, you know, within their own little group making this film. It's a film that sort of feels very organic. It's not hugely pre-planned. I think they kind of exploited deliberately or otherwise the circumstances that we're in. You know, because it's like with the infamous dinner scene. You know, a lot of that was just generated by the fact that it was just horrible to shoot. It was uncomfortable.
27 hours as well, man. The
yeah,
just 27 hours.
Nasty, uncomfortable, vomiting-inducing.
Apparently, Gunnar Hansen was saying that the meat actually started to cook because the lights were so hot, so they could all smell it. And
I mean, it would be going
he
off. Yeah,
change his mask.
No, that's the thing. You know, it's like with him, he couldn't change his outfit. They couldn't wash the outfit.
Imagine the smells of sweat and everything,
Yeah.
and
Nobody wanted to be near him, apparently.
I think it was Gunnar Hansen. I did a video on it a while back, and I said it was Gunnar Hansen's first role, but it wasn't. He'd acted on stage before, but he'd never done film.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, for that to be it was pretty method the way that he went about it. He went to a mental institution for 3 days and lived among the guys to try and. It's a great role. Kieran's talking about Eggshells there. Thoughts on Eggshells? It's a really good experimental film. I mean, it made Tobe Hooper kind of the toast of Texas at the time, because he was the one college graduate that made a decent movie, Eggshells. But what him and Kim Henkel said about Eggshells was that they realized it did the the festival circuit, but they realized that they weren't going to get into Hollywood by making movies like Eggshells. Now, I love Eggshells. I think it's got a very good political commentary in it. I think it's a beautiful film.
I will be right back.
But it was like
entertain the masses.
Sorry, am I talking too much about Hooper? I've been obsessed with him lately.
No, carry on. I've just got a nip for a second.
But I thought Eggshells was great, Kieran, man. I really enjoyed it. It was a film I didn't see for a long time. I think the first time I saw that was when they did a release of Massacre 2, Chainsaw Massacre 2, when it was a special feature on it. But it was great remaster. Good film, political commentary on it. And I think it's good, but Hooper and Henkel realized they couldn't make it to Hollywood making those kind of movies. I love it, but they decided on the horror genre, I guess. For Chainsaw Massacre, and well, it made them. And that whole thing, John, there about Tobe Hooper directing Poltergeist, it's a weird one, that, isn't it? Because there's stories about Spielberg being on set and directing certain scenes, and Hooper said that he really only directed one scene with the toy cars. But it was an interesting one, that, because I always felt sorry for Hooper in a way about Poltergeist, because I am a big Hooper fan. Like we said, I just rewatched The Mangler. I think Jin, one of his last films, is fantastic. Very theatrical filmmaker, which I love. Similar to Mouth of Madness, that whole theatrical lighting thing I really love about Hooper's later work, like Mortuary. It's very theatrical lighting. But he started that kind of with... What was the second film he did? What was the second film Hooper did, Glenn, after Chainsaw Massacre? Was it
Eaten Alive.
Eaten Alive. That's got a very theatrical look to it. And I kind of liked that theatrical look that he took onto his later work, but I don't want to start gushing again about another director, Hooper, but I really like Hooper. I think he's very underrated.
I've always got like it's funny when people talk about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and they describe it as a Hooper movie. I say it's one of the least Hooper movies out there, of his career, because it is a very, very different feel. Partly that was circumstantial, because they didn't have all the money in the world. They couldn't take about 50 shoots to. I mean, he didn't really with most of his films, but the kind of budget they were on, the experience that they had, and the fact that they had to, they were fighting the elements literally to make that movie. And the cast hated each other. Well, hated Franklin. So it was a film that was kind of a film of circumstance as much as it was anything. It was like
totally. I totally agree.
Semi-controlled chaos.
Aye. I mean, it was Hooper said he was working with all college graduates, that people had just left college. I mean, he was the only one with any real experience because of Eggshells.
Yeah.
It was so he said it was a really difficult shoot. There was a great interview with him, with Mick Garris, the director, on Mick Garris's post-mortem. And he really talked about the experience, and he said everybody hated him. He said, I was a real slave driver on it because I had to be. I couldn't allow for take two. In his words, he said, I couldn't allow for take two.
No. I mean, it was a film that was made on such a slim budget. But it's a great example of what you can do with next to nothing.
Oh, man, that's why it's an influential film to me, Chainsaw Massacre. It's unbelievable what that collective of people did. I mean, you've got maybe 5 or 6 of them who really dug in the special effects, the makeup and stuff. I mean, that's incredible. They all got careers out of it, the special effects. The makeup girl did. She went on to do some amazing films as well. I think she went on to work with Mike Nichols and stuff. It was great stuff. But they never made money on it.
You see, it's a little conversation about Poltergeist. Now, I would say this about Poltergeist. There is that argument about whether it's a Spielberg film or whether it's a Hooper movie. I would say it is very much a Hooper movie. When you look at that Poltergeist and you look at his other films, The Funhouse and all those kind of things, Eaten Alive, cinematically they feel the same. There's a lot of the same kind of camera angles, that weird sort of Funhouse thing that Rob Zombie likes to lean on.
That beautiful lighting, the over-the-top almost lighting.
It's crazy. I mean, it is that very kind of comic book sort of presentation. It's all kind of there in Poltergeist. It's toned down a little bit, if anything, but not by much. Certainly when you get like the monster comes in and does all this kind of stuff. It's very, very much a Tobe Hooper film. There's spikes of Spielberg in there. There's a little injection of the sort of sentimentality that Spielberg tends to put into movies.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But that's not a bad thing. I mean, Spielberg's very good at that. He's actually one of the few people I know that can do that stuff with an ounce of sincerity, and it doesn't feel like he's just doing it to pander. But it's but I think even Spielberg says it. No, it is Toby's film.
Well, I mean, famously, Spielberg loved Chainsaw Massacre, and that's why he brought him on board.
It's just an incredible film. If anyone goes, we don't have the, I don't have the means to make a movie. Look at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yes,
man, it was totally
you can make that movie. If you've got the talent, you can make that movie. You don't need hardly anything. We've all got cameras. Hell, just got one on your phone. You don't have to spend millions and stuff on a Red One.
Well, I mean, as you know, Glenn, we've talked about it a bit. One of my favorite directors is Abel Ferrara. And when he made Driller Killer, he actually went to the producers and said, look, Chainsaw Massacre was made for, was it 125,000 or 25,000? I can't remember which one it was. Probably 25, I would imagine. But he said, look, these guys did this, so I can do the same with Driller Killer. Just give us, and he used it as a model to make Driller Killer.
Yeah.
It's cool in that way. It's so inspiring, man.
I mean, I think it's literally with Tobe Hooper, it's the most valuable lessons he can give. The most valuable thing he's given the film world is he gave you a template to make a really powerful movie with next to nothing.
Oh, totally, man. I mean, it's all sound.
Yeah.
It is the whole movie sound, and it was all the stuff that the guys learned in film school with him. You know, how to use the sound, like the knocking on the when the girl's been putting the meat hook, she's inside the chest, the freezer.
Yeah.
And it's all just the knocking and the build up, and then Leatherface comes in and whacks the guy with the curly hair and the glasses on the head. You don't see a drop of blood. It's all the camera angles. It's all the sound. Incredible.
I think they've sort of fairly famously said, you know, the most blood you got in there is dipping their fingers in a cup of blood and going like that, just splatting it around. But yeah, you know, there's films like that. I mean, if you look at some of Wes Craven's really early stuff, or even David Cronenberg's really early stuff.
Oh, I'm a huge fan of Shivers. I love that film.
I mean, there's not a lot of gore in those films. There's little bits, you know, there's little bits which would cost you a little bit of money to do. There's a million ways you can do that kind of stuff. Texas Chainsaw is the good example of showing you how you can do a very gory film without any gore. You know, they're kind of like, okay, well, how to make a horror house? Oh, get fuck tons of chicken bones and stuff. You know.
And that guy, I mean, some of the stories that he talks about, I mean, driving around farms and just getting corpses of cows and stuff and then taking them back and boiling them down and building the stuff. It was a total team effort to make that beautiful thing. And none of them were getting paid for it.
No. It's absolutely. I think the original Texas Chainsaw was just a labour of love, as much as anything.
What did you think of Jeff Burr's The Leatherface Chainsaw Massacre 3?
Trying to kind of think of it.
It's the one with Ken Foree and,
it's
Viggo.
To be honest, I think most of the Texas Chainsaws from 2 onwards, even, you know, Tobe Hooper's second one was such a departure from the first, which is, I consider that to be much more of a Tobe Hooper film than the original.
Yeah, I know what you mean, the style.
The third one was, I think it was showing the strain of becoming a franchise.
Yeah.
Was
that New Line too? Did New Line buy it for the third one? I think they did, didn't they?
I think so, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, you know, I mean, it's a fun enough movie. Don't get me wrong. I mean, even The Next Generation is.
it's a crazy one.
It's insane. It's batshit insane. But that is one of the things that's actually kind of cool with the whole series is they do sort of somehow manage to keep a little bit of that original madness in there.
I liked it. Well, I mean, McConaughey he's good, man. I mean, the Bill Paxton movie that he was in, Frailty, he was great in that film. He did that movie with Friedkin, Killer Joe, which was a fearless performance. I mean, he's an interesting character actor.
Yeah, I think
in his later years, anyway.
I think, you know, a lot of his career has been kind of, you know, in the public eye, been defined by the more commercial sort of stuff, you know. There's the romantic lead type stuff, but he's a really good actor. I think he's an interesting actor. It was quite amusing though, you know. You got was it Renee Zellweger and him, both sort of apparently disowned the film, which I would suggest is probably more as much their agents go, don't talk about it. But
yeah, I would imagine so.
Which I hate that kind of thing when they, you know, you get these actors who come up through these movies. This is their first break, you know. It's the first thing that's gone on their CVs, their resumes, and it's like they go, oh no, I just did it because I was desperate and stupid. It's like, no, don't be like that, you know. It's all part of kind of like, you know, the journey of life in your career.
Oh, totally. I mean, someone was saying in the comments earlier on, it was. These guys who have got low budgets, they do often make political films just because they're making films in the time because they haven't got the budget.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're making films with their friends, so they're wearing their own clothes, they're in their own houses, they're in their own apartments.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're making the films in the times. Like Easy Rider, for example, is a film I love because it's almost like a time capsule.
John,
because it was made in that time.
John says, oddly enough, under Texas law, Leatherface's first murder is completely legal. He kills an intruder in his home. Yeah. And you're right. You're right. Actually, I think in the commentary they sort of allude to that as a little jokingly that there's this thing about it's one of the things that's very difficult. You've got a masked character, be it Jason or Michael Myers or Leatherface. And certainly with the kind of like Friday 13th and stuff like that, going, oh, this actor was so much better than this other one, and half the time I can't bloody tell, but you can tell with that Gunnar Hansen is really acting.
Oh man, that bit when he's in front of the window and you see him licking his lips and he's worried.
It's just I had no idea what the hell where are these fucking hippies coming from.
That's a brilliant performance. It's a bit like Freddy when Robert Englund acts through the makeup.
Yeah.
It's but Gunnar Hansen, it's a brilliant performance. It is very good.
Yeah, that's a good example actually. I think is you got Robert Englund certainly in the first couple of films. I mean, he very, very quickly degenerated into just becoming a pun monster.
Well, the guy with the sunglasses, you mean Freddy? When Freddy started wearing sunglasses and advertising Coca-Cola.
Why?
Money.
I know. Oh my god. I mean, I don't blame Robert Englund for that, but
no, not at all.
It's kind of weird. I mean, that's the thing, because he became the hero, and he's not. You sort of have to remind people that this guy is like supposed to be the bad guy. It's like the guys in Alien 3, the prisoners. In the original cut, they were so watered down as to quite the threat.
So what somebody mentioned, we're talking about Brian Glover before.
Yeah.
Wasn't he in
Alien 3?
He was in Alien 3,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, he plays like the governor.
Oh, he's a great British actor.
Oh yeah, fantastic, and just a very charismatic kind of guy. And it's like, it's because in the original theatrical cut, they basically watered down those prisoner characters, so they weren't quite so repellent. Then you've got the construction cut, where it's made very, very, very clear that these guys are nasty. That Ripley is constantly in danger wherever she is. And the fact that she has to turn to this band of rapists and murderers as the safe option is part of the horror of that construction cut.
But I like Alien 3, man. Charles Durnan's not Charles Durnan. What's his name? The guy, the priest who sacrificed.
Not Charles Dance.
No, not Charles Dance. It was I can't remember his name now.
Oh,
give us 2 seconds.
Dutton.
Yes, Dutton. Yeah, not Charles Durnan. It's Charles Dutton. Yeah, Charles Dutton's amazing in that film because his performance was the one that kind of grounded the criminals, I thought.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, he's an interesting character, and he is watered down in the theatrical version. The construction cut has a lot more kind of like that. He's still not a good guy.
I mean, no, I love him. I love that actor. He's a great actor.
Yeah,
he is. He was in it, but I mean, I guess Charles Dance too that you mentioned. I mean, Charles Dance, he was a doctor, but he was also a murderer.
Yeah, manslaughter, I guess.
Manslaughter,
they're just a really, really cool actor, apart from anything else, and a great character. And it is one of those things you sort of go, he was killed a bit early.
He was. It was a shocking scene. I remember he's in the examination room, isn't it, behind the white curtains, and it was a beautifully shot film, incredibly shot film.
Minty says, I've always been a fan of Alien 3. Yeah, I've long been a fan of it. And the construction cut, when that came out, that actually was one of the... No, I was going to say, was one of the... It is the best of the extended versions.
I'm just going to nip to the toilet.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got a lot of very interesting stuff on, and the construction cut is vastly superior. It is one of the it is the best of the extended editions within that collection, and that includes both the first two films. I mean, I love the Aliens extended edition, but the extensions to it didn't do that much more than, oh, that's cool to see that. Whereas with Alien 3, the construction cut, the extra material really kind of changed the feel of the film. It actually had a substantial impact on it, which I think was very, very cool. But, yeah. Oh, Freddy 6 was an abomination. Yeah, you know, I mean, I think I can push it to about the third one before it becomes incredibly ridiculous. Dream Warriors was fun enough, but then it goes just crazy and crazier and crazier, and it's mostly to do, I think, with the way that they treated the Freddy character. If I remember right, you know, they got increasingly regular releases, you know, so it's like kind of like they did the whole sort of Star Wars thing. I've got to release a new one this year, new one this year, new one this year. So yeah, Alien and Aliens are the only two good films out of the four. No, I'd say the third one was a really good one as well.
It was, I mean, Fincher, that was Fincher's first theatrical film, right?
I think so, yeah.
After he'd done the Madonna music videos, which I love.
Yeah.
That Frozen, the video we did for Madonna, is a beautiful video.
Yeah, I think it was, and that was the thing, because I think the studio thought they could influence him a lot more than they could. But I think he was a guy that had a very solid artistic interpretation.
I mean, I guess like, when you're that young, I mean, it was, what was that, the early 90s? You must have thought Mr. Rock and Roll, you know, and I admire him for it. The brave choices that he made, I'd say it's an excellent film.
Yeah, I like it. Simon doesn't like it.
No, it's cool, man. I can see why people wouldn't like it.
No, it's fair enough. I mean, Simon is a massive, massive fan of the second film. He does that costuming, not cosplay, costuming.
We've seen the replicas of the guns. Incredible,
some
man.
Really cool shit.
It is I mean, Aliens is an incredible film. We can't take that away.
Oh no, it's great fun.
It's an incredible film. Yeah.
I admire the first one just because of the atmosphere, and it's another film that does. I don't want to say a lot with very little, because it's not like it was an impoverished film, but it doesn't kind of have the excesses of action. It really is a very kind of measured and paced film.
Yeah.
Whereas the third one is a bit of a mix of both. There is a certain amount of. It's not a perfect film by a long shot. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely, even in the construction cut, you can feel a lot of studio interference with that film. Just like, you've got to have an action film. Action. But I think the heart of the film and the atmosphere that Fincher, you know, even in the theatrical version, you can feel Fincher's sort of world building going on.
Oh, totally. I mean, there was. I remember watching that documentary about it where they pitched the idea of it being a monk world that was made out of wood and things, and it had a big production history.
We don't mention the AVP films.
Oh, I don't know. Like, I quite liked. There's one bit in the AVP films. I think it was obviously the first one, because Requiem was terrible, wasn't it? But the bit where the Predator gives the protagonist the alien's tail and the head, so the head protects her from the acid, and the tail's a weapon that can obviously puncture the skin. I thought that was cool, but that was the only bit I thought. And Lance Henriksen popping up at the end. But that was the one scene I liked.
Yeah, but with Lance Henriksen in that one, they were basically turning around and going, "What's the cheapest fan service we can do?" Lance Henriksen. I mean, he'll do anything these days.
He's amazing. I mean, speaking of aliens, Bishop and Hudson were always my two favorite characters.
Yeah.
I think Bishop's incredible. I mean, Lance Henriksen, I've loved it. I mean, speaking of The Omen and stuff, he was in The Omen 2 too, wasn't he? And I mean, he was with Cameron on Piranha 2, The Flying Killers. And he's another one like Sam Neill. I think he's a guy that turns up and just delivers a great performance, no matter if it's Pumpkinhead or whether it's Terminator or whether it's The Omen 2. Frank Black on television, he always gives 100%. And I love that about that guy. And Bishop, for me, is one of his defining performances. I think it's a great performance.
Simon is apparently not a fan of Prometheus and Covenant.
I think Prometheus is slowly finding its audience. Covenant was kind of a rehash of the original, I thought, a little bit. It was kind of they try to do alien stalking people in the dark again.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the thing that killed both of those movies was just the storytelling. Neither film really had a very coherent kind of complete story. I don't think they knew where they were going or what they were trying to aim for with
Yeah.
either of those films. I think that's the biggest downside of it. You know, the look of it, the effects, to some extent the characters, although they're not not terribly well built, other than the android character.
Yeah.
They were very disappointing at the end of the day. Just because
I'm not disagreeing. I don't think they're great either, but I think Prometheus is slowly building an audience. And again, I mean, I'm the guy that loves every film. I just love films for films. But Prometheus, there's moments for me. There's that bit with Idris Elba playing "Love the One You're With," which I really liked, and I thought it made him feel really human.
Yeah, but there was a sad lack of humanity in a lot of the characters.
Yeah,
it's weird when the robot's the only one that's actually got the kind of any sense of sort of normal human frailties. And for me, that's where the weakness of it was really.
I mean, the bit that really took me out was the fact she gave herself a cesarean and then she was running around like nothing had happened.
Yeah, it's like
I mean, it wasn't even like when Laurie Strode gets stabbed in the leg or the arm and she's dragging her leg. You know, she wasn't even doing any of that. She was just like, "Yep, I'm fine." It's like,
run. She's going run, and the audience is go turn left.
I remember that the ship falling on Charlize Theron.
At least go 45 degrees to the left. Just anything. Just don't go straight ahead, you silly bin.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I've heard that too. About Henriksen apparently playing the Terminator first. Mm-hmm. I saw some art that was made. I'm not sure whether it was fan art, but it was Henriksen as the Terminator, and it looked so cool. Apparently, O.J. Simpson was in the running at one point as well, right, to play Terminator. But I thought it was cool. I love that about Henriksen. I love his role in Terminator. I think he's great in Terminator.
Yeah.
Just him and Traxler, the crack that they have between each other. It's a great performance. I mean, some people consider Terminator a slasher film, right?
Barely.
Barely. I
mean, it's not really.
Sorry, I'm just shooting the breeze again. I got a bit off topic.
No, I mean, I don't know. Some people might do, but I don't know. The two roles in the original Terminator, which is my favourite, is the original. I love the grimy feel to it and all that kind of stuff. It feels like kind of...
Hey, Kerry. Kerry's back.
Hello, Kerry. Feels like very old school kind of exploitation sci-fi. As opposed to the second one, which was a very weirdly pitched Pinocchio tale.
I can see that.
Yeah, it really is. It's like kind of like, teaching the Terminator to be human. Be a real boy. Cut your strings, Termy. But Lance Henriksen was supposed to be the Terminator. At least he was kind of in consideration for being the original Terminator.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's fan art, but there's a great poster out there somewhere. I'm sure it'll be on Google Images or somewhere, but it's a really cool poster.
And it would have made more sense in some respects.
Well, he was supposed to be an infiltrator.
Exactly. I mean, who the fuck looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was supposed to be an infiltrator.
But, as it is, it still works. It's just kind of like, you start overthinking these things, and it would have made more sense with him as that, and Schwarzenegger as the guy that comes back.
I've always loved the nighttime photography in that. The whole movie's beautiful.
It's got that kind of sci-fi noirish kind of thing.
It has, hasn't it? It's a beautiful looking film.
Bit of Blade Runner, but without the flashy lights.
It's got that Death Wish look, almost like apocalyptic future, but not. The city at night. It's a beautifully shot film.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, you get a certain amount of kind of.
Kerry says you could have had Stallone as a Terminator. Is that in Last Action Hero?
Yes. Yes, that was Terminator 2, wasn't it? Yeah. The standee of him. It's a film I've been meaning to watch again at some point. It's a film that, I mean, it got a hard time, did Last Action Hero.
Flopped, didn't it? It was a big flop.
Yeah, and sort of understandably so. I think there was a lot of things about the film that didn't quite sort of jive with a regular audience. I think it's the sort of film that if you watched it a couple of times, you'd probably grow on you a bit more.
I always loved it. I mean, that was a big movie when I was a kid, I think. Well, not a kid, but when I was...
Charles Dance again.
Charles Dance was a bad guy, right? And you had Tom Noonan, I remember, giving that wicked performance as a guy with the axe.
Were you there when Charles Dance was at the theatre?
No, I don't think so.
It might have been before you arrived. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. He did a show at my theatre.
He's cool. He's a cool actor, man. He's always been I don't know what you call it. He's always gotten behind independent cinema. He's always in low budget stuff, and if the role's good, he'll take it. I really admire Charles Dance.
He's always been much more of a kind of Thesp type actor. You know, it's a serious actor. So even when he has a role which is kind of like a, shall we say,
he's in a movie called White Mischief. And it
sounds dirty.
It is. It's a very dirty film. It's full frontal Charles Dance in this movie.
Wow.
But it's about a true crime that happened in, I think it was Africa. It's a beautiful looking film. Very dark, but beautiful. I think that was the first thing I saw him in.
Kieran says Death Wish 2 vibe, Cos LA. Yeah, I guess you're talking Terminator.
Terminator, it was more the first one. It was more the darkness of the city.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I'm a huge Michael Winner fan, and he talked about Death Wish as almost being set in the future.
Yeah.
It was supposed to feel like, I mean, originally, speaking to John Carpenter, which the evening was about in Mouth of Madness, they tried to get Charles Bronson cast as Snake Plissken because of Death Wish, because they said that it was the same kind of post-apocalyptic feel of the city falling apart.
Death Wish is an interesting one.
That's the kind of link I was trying to make, I think, with Terminator and Death Wish.
Yeah. Death Wish is an interesting film. We were talking about the left-right divide, and you know, I don't know if you saw the comparative video I did between that and Falling Down.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So those two kind of like a good example of like same subject matter to a great extent, but
Definitely.
A left-right divide, because it is, you know, Death Wish is very much about the American sort of Wild West justice type thing. Falling Down is very much about the kind of like the consequences of that.
Oh, totally. That's a very underrated one. I mean, I know it was popular when it came out, but I mean that performance from Frederick Forrest as the gun salesman's brilliant. It's one of my favorite Frederick Forrest moments. It's a great film.
I mean,
Kieran's mentioned there, Tom Noonan, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Chloe Sevigny. Jennifer Jason Leigh's, for me, she's one of the most incredible actresses. She did a movie called Heart of Midnight, which is a huge influence on me. I think she's one of the greatest actresses of that period.
Yeah, I mean, I've long it held the kind of, shall we say, curmudgeon-y opinion that Hollywood needs to die and then be rebuilt. Because they've lost track of what filmmaking should primarily be about, which is making good stories. They'll go, oh, we make good stories. It's like, no, you make stuff which is palatable to as many people as you can. You know, you're following that demographic kind of drive of how many bums can we put on seats. And if you ever hear any of them sort of denying that, you just look at the budgets. It's like, why are you spending 100 million, 150 million, 250 million on a film? If you're not just trying to, you know, give people eye candy to drag them into the cinema.
I totally get it. I mean, I'm a huge Roger Corman fan, and I remember when Jaws came out and then Star Wars came out. And there's a great interview with him, and he says it's obscene, man. He says we shouldn't be spending this much money on movies.
No.
He says you could rebuild part of a slum in a city, for example, with that much money.
So, I mean, I don't even need to go that kind of ideological when it comes to it. It's just it is down to the whole kind of thing that we were talking about earlier with the likes of George Romero and John Carpenter and whoever, you know, these lower budget directors, the things that kind of the lower budget sort of force them to do, not force them, but kind of require them to do, that changes the way that they have to do stuff. You know, it gives them a challenge. So often makes that difference to the film.
Oh, I totally agree.
Often the solution is better than the original idea. And that is like, you know, it's the old example of Day of the Dead. Because I think the fullest version of that would have been nowhere near as special as what you ended up with, which is that claustrophobic, stuck in a cave with a bunch of, shall we say, cavemen. And that whole kind of like, because
biggest piece of meat in the cave.
Well, exactly. You know, I mean, they had the whole kind of thing where it was supposed to be a lot more stuff above ground and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and
I read the script a couple of times.
Utterly would have watered down the kind of feel of the film. So sometimes that necessity drives innovation, and that innovation is often so much more special.
I totally agree. I mean, Day of the Dead, for all I would love to have seen Romero's, you know, out on the boats in Miami, out in the swamps. I would love to have seen it. The zombies with the red shirts and the blue shirts and the kind of wars and stuff. I would love to have seen it. But Day of the Dead's a mini masterpiece, isn't it? I think.
I mean, you look at whether you like it or not. I mean, Land of the Dead is an example of where George had a lot more freedom to do what he wanted to do almost to its entirety, and it is a less effective film than Day of the Dead. In so many respects, it's kind of a weird one as well. It's got a strange tone to it, but I think that's that's as much of the passage of time as anything.
Well, I mean, it was a weird one, Land of the Dead. I mean, as we know, we're talking about Romero a lot. We're both big Romero fans, and I kind of had to sell myself on Land of the Dead. I went to see it 3 times at the pictures, and the first time I was like, "This film's terrible, man. What's Romero doing?" And then I went back the second time and I thought, okay, it's got his themes in it, it's got some of his stuff. And then the third time I kind of made myself fall in love with it. But I think I made myself fall in love with it because I was a Romero fan.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's a bad film per se.
Oh, there's some great moments, man. I mean, Dennis Hopper picking his nose and seeing zombies, man, they creep me out. That's pretty cool, you know. You've got the guy who directed Easy Rider with the guy who directed Night of the Living Dead together in the same movie. It's got its moments, definitely.
Yeah, but it does feel very much like Romero's trying very hard to
have a message,
recapture the old days. But it does feel, it feels very much more self-conscious, I think, than his previous films.
I mean, I don't want to get into it because obviously we've been on for a while, but I'm a huge Diary of the Dead fan. I think Diary of the Dead's better than Land. But I know that's a big conversation to have. But well, I'm a huge Diary fan. I think Diary's a great film.
Yeah. We can wrap it up here if you like.
I can talk forever if you like.
Well, we can go till 11 o'clock, and then we'll call it a night because people will start to.
Cheers, gentlemen. Good night. Thanks for everything.
But we had a few. Simon's gone, so make a budget trend in cinema has just made film worse in recent years. Mid and low budgets are usually where the more interesting films are, says Kieran. Yes, I fully agree. And certainly having films that take a lot more of a chance. We don't get too many films that have like the kind of chances taken of something like. Shall we say even a divisive film like Exorcist 2 or Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which I've been kind of writing about recently. You don't get too many films like that these days. It's very much demographically driven stuff, which this is one thing you have all the controversy about Hollywood's woke it's because that's where a lot of the audience is. As much as maybe you or I might disagree with that or not kind of be in that place, that's where a lot of the audience is. That's what they're aiming for. They're looking at figures and going, that's where those people are. That's where the money is.
Oh, of course. I mean, it's always... I mean, talking about Wes Craven earlier on, it was like with Scream, he knew what he was doing. He knew the audience he was going for. You know, he knew it was a younger audience. He knew it was an audience who didn't have to pay for a babysitter, that had disposable income. You know, he knew what he was doing going for that younger audience. And it's just the same thing happens. You know, the younger audience today have got different ideals to what we had. You know, and it's and the kind of woke cinema or whatever we want to call it is it's their generation. You know.
Yeah.
I really think that, and I love their films, but. It's the same way people. I remember having a discussion with a friend of mine about Friends recently, the TV show, and he's younger than me by 15 years. And he said Friends is shocking, and he couldn't get Friends at all, and he thought was, he just thought it was terrible. And I was saying, well, we used to laugh at those guys, we didn't laugh with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we found funny about it. That's what I found funny about it.
Yeah.
And then we started talking about later stuff like Game of Thrones and things, and he was saying to me, how can you watch Hannibal? How can you watch Cannibal Holocaust with all that violence? Now, and then in the next breath, he's telling us that he watches Game of Thrones and he loves it. And it's like, well, it's just,
yeah,
it's just different generations. This is okay for you to watch,
Yeah.
If that makes any
Game of Thrones, there's murder, there's incest, there's murder while incesting.
Yeah, exactly. and we're watching this, film that's clearly.
Kieran says, I'm not sure even France has a proper independent movie scene anymore. See, the thing is, it's as much to do with the audience. We have the means to actually kind of do this stuff these days. We have more opportunities.
I'm trying myself. I always try.
Yeah.
I'm doing short films and
the hardest
independent stuff. I'm editing and teaching, trying to pay the rent.
I mean, the hardest thing is getting attention. Because that is the thing these days, is the attention economy. And Hollywood just happens to be, even to this day, just supremely good at doing it, because they spend a lot of money on it. Now, if you want the independent scene to get better, then go out there, find them. They're out there, but you've got to find them and you've got to push them. So when you find a little independent movie that you like, you make as much noise about it as you can. That's the way to do it.
Totally.
Which is something that I should be trying a bit more. I've got friends who do this kind of stuff, so it would be nice to, I really should be sort of watching this stuff and kind of shoving it out there a bit more.
No, totally, man. And you can do it. I mean, there's people like Kelly Reichardt who've proven that you can do it. I mean, she made her first film in 1993, didn't get another film made for 6 years.
Yeah.
And now she's made 3 in the last 4 or 5 years, but she's still pumping them out. And it's just out of pure passion that she's made it. And she's kind of made it now. She's working with actresses like Kristen Stewart and stuff now. And
see, that's a couple of actors that I've been delighted to be surprised by. It was Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson.
Oh, me too, man. It was Cosmopolis blew my mind.
Yeah.
I thought he was brilliant.
Robert Pattinson's just turned out to be a really fucking good actor. And it's like, because everybody was sort of like kind of down on Twilight. It took me the longest time the only reason I saw that film was because my ex-girlfriend sort of like went, I've got this Blu-ray, right? I don't want to watch it. Do you want to take it off of me? And I went, oh yeah, sure, because I don't like to see a Blu-ray go into the bin. And it took me years to actually sort of sit down and watch it. And I watched it and I kind of went, yeah, it's not good by any means.
It's all right.
It is what it is, it's not...
it's all right.
Such savage reviews of that film. And I was like...
it's a kid's book aimed at 14 to 15-year-old guys, that's the audience.
It's a tweens film. It's kind of aimed at girls. It's aimed at girls, 12 to 16, 12 to 18. You can argue the ethics of that story in that respect. There's a reason why 50 Shades of Grey is kind of like it was a fanfic of Twilight essentially.
Well, speaking about tie-ins and The Mouth of Madness, the guy that wrote the screenplay, Mike DeLuca, produced 50 Shades of Grey. He's a multi-millionaire now.
His career went from strength to strength.
And after writing Freddy's Dead and The Mouth of Madness,
oh my god,
he went on to do 50 Shades of Grey, produce 50 Shades of Grey.
God, that was a bad movie. That was a genuinely bad movie.
It was. It was funny. I was sharing a house with a few people at the time. I think it was when I was a student. And one of my friends was reading it, and he gave us a book, and I couldn't make it through the book. I read about the first 2 chapters, and I thought, this is awful.
Yeah.
And I saw about the same with the movie. I did sit through the whole first movie, but man, it was awful.
Kieran puts a good point here. He goes, this is exactly what I think. For me, political correctness goes hand in hand with capitalism because it sells. Just don't tell Ben Shapiro that.
That was crazy, that Ben Shapiro Barbie thing.
Oh, isn't it awful? Oh my god! I mean, that is. that is cringe. That's
I mean,
like, you know.
I'm a big Noah Birnbaum fan. I mean, the first film he directed, Kicking and Screaming, for my money, is a fantastic film. Squid and the Whale is okay. Marriage Story are okay. But Greta Gerwig, I'll never forget this. It was when Lady Bird, Lady Bird, it first came out. And I was speaking to an academic about it. And I said, I didn't quite get it. And she said, oh, well, John, that's because you're not a 12-year-old girl.
And that is a valid point. There are films that are kind of aimed at a certain audience, and that's the thing.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah. You got Twilight. It's not aimed. It's not a film. I think I said, somebody asked me why haven't I sort of reviewed it, because it is, technically speaking, a horror film. And I says it's not a film that's aimed at me. It's not. I'm not the audience for that. I couldn't give an honest review of it. And there was a point where I might have done it as a joke, but I've always kind of like, since then, and I've grown to kind of not like doing that. That's exactly what Ben Shapiro did. He deliberately went to a movie that he knew. In fact, he didn't just know he wasn't going to like. He was determined he wasn't going to like, and he oh god, it's the cringiest review I've ever seen. I mean, it's like it makes the nostalgia critic look like Roger Ebert.
That's so true, though. Yeah, I remember in the 80s we would hire a VHS for the weekend. You might hate it on the first watch. By the second watch, you get value for money. By the third watch, you like it.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna have to like it because you've just spent £1.50 on it.
I know exactly what you mean. I did that with so many films.
Stephanie Myers just can't write. That's very true, but there's plenty of bad writers out there. See, the thing is, if you get a writer that's very bad, that makes a successful product, and then somebody rips it off who's an even worse writer. I mean, that's like shitception.
But I mean, I guess it's the same. I mean, talking to Twilight and stuff, and Lady Bird, and Barbie. Is it the same as the way we used to watch The Breakfast Club and stuff? I mean, is it? I mean, is the audience for Barbie the audience that's watching The Breakfast Club?
You know what? I think it probably is. I haven't seen it. I would actually be interested in seeing it, funny enough. Not because I'm into...
It's not a bad movie, man. It's well made, good performances, the music's great.
I've heard interesting things about it. It's
definitely got an underlying current.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd be kind of interested to see it just as a kind of example of a movie of its, a modern movie which is aimed at a particular audience with a political message that I may or may not agree with to whatever degree. But it certainly seems like it's got, some sort of integrity to what it's trying to do, which I think is, a good thing.
It is, but it's all it has, yeah, but it has, but it's also Greta Gerwig and Noah Birnbaum. I mean, they've kind of made it now, and we've watched them two struggle for a long time. We have through these little, I mean, Frances Ha and stuff. I mean, her films were kind of echoes, I thought, of Hal Hartley films, like Henry Fool or films like that. You would kind of see the influence. But they always had a modern edge, and I thought, oh, well, this is the new Hal Hartley. This is the new, I don't know how you describe it, the new Gregor Kari, for example, let's see. And Noah Birnbaum was the same, and it's like, wow, they've really made it. But a lot of filmmakers are making it now, like Andrea Arnold. The people who we grew up with as independent filmmakers and now making the big films.
Yeah.
If that makes any kind of sense.
And you just have to hope that they don't get sucked down a rabbit hole. Yep.
And I think they kind of did a bit with Barbie, but hey, I enjoyed it. I would recommend it for one watch anyway. I probably won't watch it again, but I enjoyed it.
I mean, I don't expect it to be like a new Citizen Kane or anything like that. But it's not what it is. But I think from what I've seen of it, it looks like it has some fairly solid ideas and some fairly sly kind of approach to those ideas. I think it's
which I like it. I mean, that Greta Gerwig and Noah Birnbaum, they're two very smart people. They are. I mean, their films, like I say, Alive and Kicking, or Kicking and Screaming. Sorry, not Alive and Kicking, Kicking and Screaming. If anybody wants to see a film by Noah Birnbaum, watch that. It's an incredible film. It really is. I mean, he did Marriage Story, which had its moments. She did Lady Bird, Lady Bird, Frances Ha, which I really liked. And, they've come together and they've made this global phenomenon, I mean, it's going to make them millionaires.
Marriage Stories, was that the Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson film?
Yes, that was so Noah Birnbaum co-wrote it with Greta Gerwig. I think they got married, if I remember rightly.
I'm never sure whether it's Johansson or Johansson, because it would have, yes. I assume because it's American, it'll be Joe. But
Johansson. I mean, she was. I remember seeing her in Ghost World, man. That movie blew my mind. That was a brilliant film.
She's a pretty good actress. Yeah.
Yeah, it was based on a graphic novel I read years ago, and when they did the film, I was so happy. And man, she was great in that. I mean, she did Vicky Cristina Barcelona, which I really liked her in. Lost in Translation. But Marriage Story was almost like a modern retelling of Bergman's Scenes from a Marriage. It was. That's kind of what Birnbaum was going for with it.
Yeah, but I've not seen it, but it looks like a kind of very sort of small story, which is, something I actually quite like.
Laura Dern's fantastic in it. Great role. She has a smaller role.
That's another actress that's very underrated. She has some, she's had some great work in the past. I mean, infamously, I'm the one person in the world that seems to like Inland Empire.
Add me to the list. I think it's his masterpiece, personally.
I've kind of held it up as being, it's like most people go, Razorhead straight away. And Razorhead is amazing. I love Razorhead, and it is an equal match between that and Inland Empire to some degree. But I think Inland Empire has a lot more going on.
I know we kind of... I love Lost Highway. I know you kind of didn't like it as much as I did. But that was after Inland Empire for me. It's kind of a tie between Razorhead and Lost Highway.
I think Lost Highway for me, it's not that I didn't like it. It was more, I think the story isn't as complete as it should be. I think that there is something confused about it. I think there's some problems with the writing on it. And I think because you've got those two worlds and stuff like that, but they don't quite mesh. At least I haven't made them mesh. I haven't been able to kind of like reconcile like the first part of the movie to the second part of the movie. They seem
I can see it. I can see what you mean. I mean, I think it's supposed to be disconnected.
That's quite possible. I mean, visually it's stunning.
Oh man, that moment when she gets out the taxi cab, and Lou Reed's one of my favorite singers of all time.
Kieran says ScarJo, now she's fit.
And they play this magic moment as she gets out the taxi, and he shoots it in this slow motion, so you see the frames flicker. And man, it's almost like the most beautiful music video that was ever created.
Yeah, it's a thing with Lynch, isn't it? He does do a lot of flashy. He does a lot of the flashy, doesn't he? He likes the kind of. It's usually accompanied by that electrical sound, or it's usually the source is electrical. There is something he has a real kind of almost spiritual connection with.
There's a great interview with him and Kermode. And Kermode's talking about Firewalk with Me, and he says, man, the arc and electricity, I think this is what it's about. He gives him this whole theory about it. And Lynch just says, well, I just like the way it looked, man. He's like, I just like the way it looked, so I put it in the film. There's nothing behind it. I just thought it looked cool.
But he does it a lot.
It's
that's
beautiful.
The thing, whether it's in Twin Peaks or whether it's in kind of like any of his other films, it's a lot that kind of sparking electricity kind of thing. I think, as much as David Lynch might sort of play it down, I think there is a almost a kind of...
there's a theme there. There's something there.
There's a thing there that there is a connection that goes beyond just going as an aesthetic. Because I don't think David Lynch is just about aesthetics. I think he's kind of much more meditative about those kind of things.
I mean, I remember in The Return, one of my favourite moments was in the last episode, or second to last episode, where they're driving along the road and they're looking up at the electricity lines to find out where the place is that they're going to kind of go between the I don't know what you call it, the worn fabric of existence that they're going to go through to go to the other place. And the electric lines just start jumping all over the place. I love that moment. It was one of my favourite moments in the whole TV series.
That's another thing maybe we should do a stream on is a David Lynch movie at some point. Because I think that'd be an interesting.
He's an absolute hero. Absolute hero, man.
Right. I think we will call it a day there. So
oh man, we should go on.
we could do, but I think we'll start losing the audience at some point soon.
I know.
So.
I'm sorry. I just love it.
Yeah, no, we should absolutely do this again because it's been a hell of a lot of fun to do this with you. So okay, we will call it an evening, folks. I'm not quite sure when the next one will be. It'll probably be the weekend after next. So get any kind of suggestions in there that you want at the Rumbleholics on Facebook. Unless John comes up with a better idea. But thank you so much for.
Well, thanks, Glenn. Thanks for having us on. I mean, I really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for listening.
Tell them where can they find you?
John Rennie's Boneyard Pictures. I've also got Germany's Boneyard Music and Boneyard Tales, but Boneyard Pictures is where you want to be. That's where we're talking about movies.
He's got a nice set of pipes. Really has. Actually, he's a really good singer-songwriter. So check that stuff out as well. But we will see you soon. So take care, folks. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, John. It has been a wonderful evening.
My pleasure, man. It's one of my favourite Carpenter films. I think it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, it was a good choice, and thank you for the suggestion that we had. So we'll say goodnight and take care, folks, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Try not to get too drunk like I am about to get. Good night, folks.
Good night. Thanks, man.